bright afternoon, but that rain eventually reaches them through Sunday evening, likely to turn to sleet and snow over the high ground. And then we've got another weather front just pushing across the south of the UK. Again, some heavy downpours likely here. Generally remaining unsettled through the first part of next week, but there are some hints that we're likely to see high pressure starting to build, although perhaps turning a little chilly.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Alex Armstrong, Dr. Renee, Kai Wilshaw and Will Kingston. Tonight on the show...
The Donald demolishes DEI dogma.
Why I've changed my mind about the death penalty.
Migrants shouldn't need to be told not to film school children.
And you're being gaslit by the government.
Trump's rejection of foreign aid is a moral catastrophe.
Good for him. It's 6 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. A very good evening and a very warm welcome to the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, back in the hot seat after a brief yet dramatic absence last weekend. My friends, I must confess, I fell victim to food poisoning. Now, I'm not one to point fingers, you know me by now, but falling ill just as Alex Armstrong discovers a taste for television is a little bit too coincidental. I can confirm to GB News viewers tonight that I've contacted Northumbria Police and they are indeed investigating whether Alex has been tampering with my Greg's pastries and pasties in his mission to claim this chair.
Funny, because Ben and Patrick were also off air as well.
But Alex's alleged sabotage, my friend, it goes further. Doesn't stop there. One of our panellists tonight, poor Willie, has also been struck down. And let me tell you, my friends, I strongly suspect Alex has rubbed him up the wrong way. Quite literally. Look at him. He's sitting there, stiff as a board, upright, to attention, like he's auditioning for the advert of a little blue pill. Honestly, it's a miracle he's still functioning. But don't worry, my folks, Willie's determined to expose Alex's schemes to turn the Saturday 5 into the Saturday 1. Get your filthy mitts off. And joining us to help keep things from spiralling completely out of control is Britain's most glamorous GP, Dr. Renee. She's here to prescribe us a much-needed dose of reality. And who knows, she might even have a remedy for Willie's sudden rigidity. 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 It's rigidity too. And last but by no means least, it's Kai Wilshaw. Kai's been unwell too, but I don't think we can blame Alex for this one, my friends. No. Poor Kai has been inconsolable ever since Trump declared there are only two genders. Cardiff's only gender-fluid, non-binary, self-described Blairite babe has been stomping around like a scorned drag queen, howling into a share collection and demanding justice. The fact he's made it here tonight, I think it's nothing short of heroic, my friends.
You're welcome.
Now, each of our...
I'm crying. That was so funny.
We'll outline their arguments about a chosen topic, then it's game on. Expect things to escalate faster than, well, Willie. And Rachel Reeves, and faster than she can tank the British economy, my friends, and hasn't she done a marvellous job? And of course, my friends, we want to hear your views. Drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. And don't forget to send in your questions for Ask the Five. No topics off limits, though I suspect tonight we'll have a particularly Willie-heavy theme. And before we descend into complete chaos, or Willie does, it's time for your Saturday Night News with Aaron Armstrong.
Well, a very good evening to you. Our top stories. A 14-year-old has been charged with the murder of Birmingham schoolboy Leo Ross, who was stabbed in a country park on Tuesday. The youth, who can't be named because of his age, was arrested around 4 hours after the 12-year-old Leo suffered fatal injuries on a riverside path in the Hall Green area. His family have released a statement today describing Leo as an amazing, kind, loving boy who was loved so much by everyone. 4 female Israeli soldiers held by the terror group Hamas have been reunited with their families. They were taken to a hospital in Tel Aviv, where they finally saw their loved ones after 15 months in captivity. Hostages Karina Ariev, Daniela Gilboa, Naama Levy, all 20, and the 19-year-old Liri Albag were serving with the Israel Defense Forces when they were captured. Well, earlier they were released in Gaza City, here surrounded on a podium by Hamas fighters, before being guided to Red Cross vehicles and then taken to the border and handed over to the IDF. Well, as part of the exchange, Israel has now released some 200 Palestinian prisoners, although 70 of those accused of the most serious crimes were not in the West Bank, where these pictures are. They will be deported, it's understood, to other countries via Egypt. The first wave of release last weekend saw 3 Israeli hostages freed, including the British Israeli Emily Damari. Now, travellers are facing ongoing disruption because of Storm Eowyn, as efforts to clear up the damage done by Friday's hurricane-force winds continue. Thousands of properties are still without power, and there is continuing travel disruption across the country. Trains and ferries have been suspended, roads are still closed, and weather warnings remain in place, particularly in Scotland. Winds reached some 100 miles per hour yesterday in places. One person was killed. He's been named as Casper Dudek. He was killed in Donegal in the Republic of Ireland. In Ireland, about 460,000 customers were still without power earlier this afternoon, although the situation is better on the railways here in the UK. Today, Network Rail says most of the network is up and running. Farmers across the country have been staging a national day of unity in a bid to protect the sector. It comes as mounting pressure grows on the government to halt the controversial inheritance tax, and it could see some farmers forced to sell their land. The National Farmers Union has warned many farmers are at breaking point.
Farmers are on their knees. They can't pass their farms to their children. They're already struggling to make ends meet. We have more suicides for farmers and for individual workers than pretty much any profession. They struggle with poverty. They struggle with years of all of the impact of the climate change sort of measures that have been put in place. They are just struggling to make ends meet. And now this new Labour government has come in to destroy their way of life, to destroy the British countryside. Who is going to protect our beautiful countryside and our way of life without the farmer?
WH Smith is in talks to sell its entire high street business in Britain. The retail group, which has been valued at around £1.5 billion, says it's exploring potential options, including a sale. The first of some 500 stores opened more than 230 years ago. The high street arm employs around 5,000 people across the UK. WH Smith will reportedly confirm this plan to the London Stock Exchange on Monday. And Buckingham Palace has released a photograph of the King ahead of Burns Night later. The photograph, which has been posted on the royal family's X account, shows His Majesty at Balmoral Castle dressed in traditional tartan kilt, and the caption wishing those celebrating a very happy Burns Night. And we also wish you the same, a very happy Burns Night, whatever you may be doing or indeed drinking. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in just under an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Saturday night, my friends, and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, and I can promise that you're in for a very lively show. James has just written in and he says, I see Darren is back from his work experience as a lumberjack. That's a good start.
That explains the tan.
Well, yes, I was outside for a long time. Right, let's crack on with tonight's first debate. Who's going to take us off?
It's going to be me.
All right.
OK.
Well.
Right, so today, guys, I'm doing a U-turn. Those who know me, many of them who argued with me over the year, know that up until this week I've been vehemently opposed to the death penalty. Not for any moral reason that we shouldn't kill people, the state shouldn't kill people, it makes us as bad as them, but purely because if we execute one innocent person, then it has to be wrong. And let's face it, the state does get it wrong. A man has just spent 17 years in prison for a rape that he didn't commit. But I have changed my mind. This Thursday, as I listened to the abject horror that a vile, sadistic, psychopathic man-boy inflicted on a fun-filled dance class of 26 little girls, it just finished me. The fear, the pain, the confusion that those little babies must have suffered as this demonic-looking man that they didn't know pursued them through a dance hall where they were having fun until 3 of them lay dead on the floor. And 10 of them were so wounded that their lives are changed forever, is more than my mind can cope with, let alone the parents and the victims. He knew what he was doing. He knew where he was going. He intended to kill those little girls. He was caught at the scene. He had the weapon that killed them. He had their blood on his clothes. This is not a miscarriage of justice. There is no doubt there should be no appeal. He killed these children in cold blood. And the British people tend to agree with me, even before this week. 52% of the public say that for child killers they would support the death penalty, and 55% say they would support it for terrorist acts. We did a GB News poll today that you've just seen on Nana's show, where 95% of you said that they would support the death penalty. This man gave up his right to life when he stepped into that class, when he took little Elsie Dot, Alice and BB from this world, from their parents, forever. He gave up any right to breathe the same air as another human being. It's going to cost at least £3 million to keep him in prison and keep him safe in prison. I say, kill him and give that money to the victims for the support that they will inevitably need to navigate their way through this world without their babies by their side and with the wounds that he inflicted that will follow them for the rest of their lives. There's no other course of action for this man.
Well said.
Very well said. Can I ask, what were your reasons for being opposed to capital punishment in the past?
It really was on the basis of miscarriages of justice. I really did just feel that if we got it wrong, we can't kill innocent people. This man is not innocent.
No.
There's no doubt. So in exceptional cases where there is no doubt, I've changed my mind.
And how do you think actually the opponents of it actually managed to square their support for assisted dying, for example, but then their opposition to capital punishment?
Yes, it's bizarre, isn't it? It really is bizarre that you could support one and not the other. Almost like because one is a choice, that the other one isn't. We're doing it to them. But my argument, as you know, against assisted dying is that I don't believe it will always be a choice. It will be coercion. And that, again, is wrong. If one innocent elderly person dies who doesn't want to, that's wrong. So that's why I say in this case, there's no doubt.
I think there's certain cases where the evidence is just so obvious and clear, as you pointed out in your monologue, that surely the only correct action can be the death penalty. I mean, seeing all the reporters who were in that room, watching them deliver it on air, most of them are very emotional, from GB News as well. Very, very good reporting. You just think, Christ, like, we cannot let this man breathe air. And what I'm so angry about is that he will be up to get out in 52 years. I know it sounds like a long time, but he will be young enough to breathe air.
That's such a valid point, because in 52 years, the people that sit on that parole board may not be alive today. They may not live through what we've just lived through, the detail.
But those children who escaped will.
Exactly.
Those children who escaped will. And then the fact that Keir Starmer won't look back retrospectively and change the law and say, well, actually, he's 18 now. He should serve full life, never stepping free ever again.
Well, the court and the Prime Minister have both said that is very unlikely. Yeah. That's the language they've used. So why is that not enough, do you think?
Because what's the point of keeping this man alive?
And actually, to be clear, I absolutely agree with you.
I think sometimes punishment is about retribution. I don't think it's always about, punishment and rehabilitation. Sometimes it's
Well, I don't think you can rehabilitate someone like that.
No.
I really don't.
So I remain opposed to the death penalty, despite the fact that every fibre of my being wants to see this man suffer and hang. There are the principled arguments, of course, and Renee even alluded to some of those before, in her introduction. But to add a couple of practical points for why I actually still think the death penalty is a more appropriate punishment. The first is, I think this man will go through more immense suffering and pain as someone who killed 3 children in prison than he would if he was just going to be killed. I think, if anything, this is a far more severe punishment.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And the other thing I would say is it's more expensive to put someone to death in the United States than it is to keep them in jail for the rest of their lives. And I imagine that would be replicated in the
I tell you what, Will.
That argument doesn't actually stand.
I tell you what, Will. I will personally, out of my taxes, pay for the rope.
Sure. If that's your view, fine. But the argument around it is cheaper to put them to death straight away does not actually hold.
That's only because of 20 years of appeals.
Exactly
this man
right.
should have no appeal because there is no miscarriage here.
I understand that this is such an emotional time. You still need to have due process and the rule of law and all that sort of stuff.
In prison, Will, what I cannot square is that, and there are people on this panel that obviously have children, he will be safer in prison behind bars than, one, any other prisoner, but two, than most of the British public.
Yeah, I don't think he should have any particular protections in prison. And I think he should never be released. I'm absolutely in agreement with that.
The thing is, if our prisons were like gulags, then I might agree.
Yeah.
But they're not. Our prisoners have TVs and Game Boys.
And he's going to get education and fed 3 times a day.
Assuming he is ever around the general prison population, he will be getting a baseball bat with barbed wire kind of thing. This is not going to be a pleasant experience for him.
Kai?
Look, I think we touched on the difference between the death penalty and him having a whole life sentence. Now, sick people will do evil things, and the difference between those two penalties or sentences is whether or not one is a deterrent versus the other. Now, is the death penalty going to be a deterrent to a crazy person, like this man clearly was?
He's not crazy. He was
Is it going to be a deterrent from him to do what he did? No. And so, in the meantime, this will keep happening. Issues like this are going to keep happening, whether or not you have the death penalty or whether you lock somebody up for life. Now, I would rather that the state hold better standards than
you know
this
what,
man.
Kai, though? They're saying...
And therefore, I think it's
hang
right
on, we haven't
not
got
to
very
be...
long, so I'm going to have to push in. But the fact of the matter is, earlier today on this channel, I heard people argue, oh, well, you know, he had a difficult upbringing because his father may have had some connection to the Rwandan genocide. I don't give a flying flamingo if his father was involved with the Rwandan genocide. Why are we bringing these people here in the first place with all these issues?
But there are some people who, through no fault of their own, are born with mental health issues that...
He doesn't have a mental health issue. He
clearly does.
No,
He clearly does. You read the
anybody who can
papers.
murder somebody does. He has been classified by doctors as sane.
So Kai would say, oh, well, he's got autism. That's the watchword of the moment now, isn't it?
He is a psychopath.
Yes.
That's his illness.
But anybody could be born as a psychopath and should be locked up if they commit these kind of crimes. But to say that the state should kill people in the same way that he killed those little girls, I think is wrong.
All right, okie dokie, we'll leave that one there. And lots of views coming in. I'll get to some of those in just a moment. But which one of you rapscallions wants to go next?
Yeah, I'll go next, Darren, if that's all right.
Yeah, not in the wrong chair, mate.
No, wrong chair tonight, wrong chair tonight. But, you know, this last week has made me extremely angry. And I'm sure many of you at home are angry as well. But what's really getting to me is the gaslighting. It's the constant gaslighting by the government and by government-led institutions. And there's clearly a cancer in our government, and there's a root to that cancer. And I strongly believe, that is the CPS, also known as the Crown Prosecution Service. Now, they have had a litany of failures that I'd sit here all hour, which I'm sure Darren wouldn't like very much, all hour telling you about. But just to name a few, the Savile case, Mohammed Al-Fayed, the post office scandal. And now we're talking about this awful act of what I call terrorism in Southport. Now, the police in Merseyside have, of course, come out with a little bit of a fight this week because they claimed that the CPS gagged them from releasing what I would call crucial public information about Radio Bacana during and after that awful massacre. Now, who are the CPS to tell this country what they should and shouldn't know? And let's have a little look at what they've done previously. If we just reflect back on the awful murder of Joe Cox, for example, well, immediately, within 24 hours, the press are reporting this is a far-right terrorist. And the evidence the CPS gave for terrorism was that there were Nazi materials found at home and that he was shouting Britain first. So, a lone wolf? Because that's what we're calling Radio Bacana. We look at him, well, we've got him stating that he wants a white genocide, the ricin found in his room, the jihadi materials, and the attempt for him to go and commit a massacre at school that was stopped by his father. That, to me, screams terrorism. And I'm sure most of you at home probably agree. But the CPS and the courts don't agree on that. They think this was a lone wolf, the Amazon killer, they've dubbed him. They're blaming everybody but their own failure. I think there is a cancer in our country, and it seems to me that it is rooting back every time to the CPS, which was used to be led by now our Prime Minister. So I'm asking the panel tonight whether we need to drain the swamp, shut down the CPS, and bring in something brand new that is actually reflective of what Brits want in 2025.
Well, Kai, I'm assuming that you disagree with that.
Well, what good does shutting down the CPS do to all of this? I mean, it gives advice to police pre-charge, it helps with charging decisions, it helps prosecute people for crimes, it helps with appeals, and then also extradition. So I don't really see...
OK, well...
If you want a criminal law system in this country that properly prosecutes people, yes, there are issues right now, many to do with the defunding of public bodies in the 14 years of Tory government that we've had. But if you want a properly functioning criminal justice system in this country. You're saying defund the central body.
Oh, I'm saying get rid of it entirely.
Prosecutions against the criminals that we just talked about.
Let me just address some of your points, Guy. Let me address some of your points. You're saying that 14 years, of course, this of the Tories. Well, Jimmy Savile case was before. That was before the Tories. The Mohammed Al Fayed case was before the Tories were in government. The grooming gangs have been going on before. The CPS's failures go back decades. Decades. Not just 10 years.
That's why your
decades.
argument is so tenuous, because you're relying on decades-old crimes to
the grooming gangs are now. The Radu Bakana case is now. The Radu Bakana case is now. The grooming gang scandal is happening now. And last year alone, Sir Keir Starmer's reforms were slammed by an independent body, saying there's still victim shaming, there's still rape blaming.
Add to this, Kai, that the problem with every institution in this country, including the CPS, is every time you add another layer, which is what the CPS is, we've got it in the NHS, another layer and another layer, you actually just create a more expensive behemoth of an industry, but actually many, many more gaps through which the people who pay for it fall.
Who's in charge? Who's in charge?
Every institution.
Are the lawyers running our country now? Left-wing lawyers run. It's not a democracy anymore.
I actually think it goes back to the Human Rights Act, the ECHR, the Equality Act. All of these things mean that actually people are turning a blind eye to certain crimes if they're committed by people with certain skin colours than they do the other way around.
But Keir Starmer saying that the CPS, said he couldn't do it because he'd be prejudiced, he couldn't release the information about him being a terrorist. However, they did it for these other cases.
I agree with everything you've said, but I think the CPS is just one block in a much bigger problem.
Of course it is, of course it is.
It has a particular worldview, and when atrocities occur that challenge that worldview, they obfuscate. But you know what the thing is that really infuriates me is the way that Starmer has chosen to obfuscate is to pick the things that he has particular issues with, social media and tech oligarchs, and he said, well, they must be the problems that have led to this atrocity, and that I find morally reprehensible.
Of course, Starmer would deny that and say, you're wrong.
How has Amazon or how has social media got anything to do with this tragedy?
It was a complete
cop-out.
It is the gaslighting.
For the cover-up.
Yeah, it's the gaslighting that Alex mentioned. But you're right, every single one of these institutions has similarly been infected with DEI.
Yes.
And once there's DEI, nothing...
And can I just say...
Like Paul, who's a member, says the problem with the CPS is DEI. Every single DEI role should be made redundant.
I couldn't agree more.
We need a Trump.
We do. I mean, look, I feel so angry about this because it's so obvious to every British person this is a terrorist attack. It's caused terror. It's the bare minimum. And when they're calling him a lone wolf now, saying they need to find new ways to tackle these sorts of things. Well, what was Joe Cox's murderer then? Was he a lone wolf?
the Manchester bomber?
Yes, exactly. So look, listen, it feels to me that the CPS have had some sort of hostile takeover. The police are being gagged by them. The Prime Minister's being gagged by them. Who else is being gagged by the CPS who clearly can't do their jobs properly?
The problem, the only takeover of the CPS has been by the fact that we don't pay criminal lawyers in this country well enough. If we want a CPS that functions, and by the way, this is just so classic, shut down the CPS as if that's an answer. No, let's actually identify what the problems are. The problems are we don't pay criminal lawyers enough in this country. If we do that, then we'll have a functioning CPS. That's the answer, not shutting it down.
Another one. Honestly, right. And of course, the CPS and, well, actually, it was the CPS decision say that it wasn't terrorism. I'll let everyone else at home make up their minds on that. Right, still to come tonight, Kai is going to give us his take on Donald Trump's decision to freeze foreign aid, exempting only, well, everyone but Egypt and Israel. But next, I'll discuss why we need to put our foot down and protect our way of life in Britain, my friends. You're with the Saturday 5. We're live on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Newly released MI5 files reveal that Queen Elizabeth II was kept in the dark over the treachery of a senior courtier.
Yeah, for almost a decade. This is Sir Anthony Blunt, who played a double life passing intelligence, the KGB, during World War II as a senior MI5 officer. But, remarkably, he was allowed to keep his position amid fears of a major scandal if the truth came out.
Well, now those files have been released by the National Archives, which includes the Queen's response to finding out a trusted member like Anthony Blunt was really a traitor.
Well, joining us now in the studio is GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Good to see you this morning, Cameron. This is astonishing.
Oh, absolutely. And this wasn't a little spy. This was Anthony Blunt was a full-blown spy. He passed to the Soviets the D-Day deception plans during the Second World War. He was working for MI5, but a double agent for the KGB as well.
The wrong plans.
He passed on the plans.
The wrong ones.
The wrong one in 1944. Yeah. Exactly. But he then got a job inside Buckingham Palace as one of the Queen's most trusted aides and courtiers, the surveyor of her art, essentially like kind of an art advisor for her late Majesty. There was always suspicions about Anthony Blunt way back in the early 50s because he was part of this notorious Cambridge spy ring, a group of 5 boys recruited at Cambridge. 2 of these people fled to Moscow in 1951. Anthony stayed behind in London and subsequently got a job inside Buckingham Palace, and it wasn't until 1964 that he confessed to his treachery. The reason he confessed was because he was granted immunity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Thank you very much for all of your messages about tonight's topics. Of course, the opening of the show has not my absolutely hilarious monologue, if I do say so myself, but your very touching one, Renee. Michael says, having watched this great show since day one, Michael, your 5 is in the post, he says very seriously, that was the most powerful monologue I've ever heard by Dr. Renee. It reduced me to tears.
Thank you.
Right, OK, now it's time for our next debate, and I've decided that because Alex has, been so boisterous, he said, I want to go before you, Darren. All right, I'll let you... I'm going to go next.
I thought you were going to say something else for a second.
Right. I'm going to kick us off. Britain, my friends, is under siege. Not from bombs or foreign armies, and not just from those fighting-age men crossing the English Channel. On Wednesday, His Majesty's government announced it would halve tax relief for repairs to Britain's historic churches, leaving nearly 1,000 at immediate risk of closure. There aren't just old buildings that represent our churches. They're the soul of our country. This is nothing more than a lefty assault on, well, our faith and indeed our farms too. It's happening across the piece. A favourite of mine, St Bartholomew's the Great in London, has stood for over 900 years. It survived the Great Fire of London and the Nazi Blitz. But here's the real question. Will it survive Labour? The left's grand strategy is pretty simple. Dismantle our heritage, erase our shared culture, and leave us rootless in this warped, dystopian future they're seeking to build. These buildings, which have given our country so very much, are being left to crumble. Some of them are being turned into mosques or something else. And meanwhile, £117 million is being funnelled to protect places of Muslim worship. And it's not just our history that's under attack, it's the safety of our present. In Dinshange, parents are pulling their children from school because migrants housed in a nearby hotel have been loitering and filming kids. Police there insist that there is no evidence of crimes, yet patrols and lessons on appropriate behaviour are underway. I don't know about you, but I've never needed to be told not to film kids. This isn't incompetence. I think it's intentional. Strip us of our heritage, undermine our traditions, and create a climate where communities are simply too afraid to stand up for themselves or even fire off a tweet. Our inheritance has been sold off, our communities feel unsafe, and we're being conditioned to look the other way. We stand to lose far more than old buildings that you might see. You might dismiss them as such. We lose safety at the school gate as well. And when that happens, we lose who we are. And once that's gone, there ain't no getting that back. Right, Kai, I've got to let you come in because...
Do you have to?
Well, unfortunately. But listen, I'm assuming that you're going to tell me I'm Islamophobic and that Labour's new definition would mean that I'm going to jail.
No, look.
Yes.
What you've just told us is a litany of different angry statements about quite disparate issues that you've bunched together to create a sort of a culture war issue. Now, look, we can all agree that art, culture, heritage has been massively underfunded in recent years, right? Yes.
What about
Number two, let me finish. Number two, you then go on to talk about the difference between the underfunding of those cultural heritage assets and then actually the funding of security of mosques and that kind of stuff. Now, why do mosques need security? I'll tell you the same reason that Italy has policemen with guns outside synagogues is because dangerous criminals want to attack those places of worship. Half of religiously motivated crimes in England and Wales in the last few years have targeted Muslims. So that's why we're spending millions of pounds on supporting the Muslim community.
Where is this?
And that is a separate issue to heritage.
Arson attacks are happening on our churches as well.
But
2022.
But I've just told you half of religiously motivated attacks
you mentioned Italy. Why
against
is that?
Muslims.
What has Europe done to itself in order for Jews
and again,
to be
you bring in a different topic because it's uncomfortable.
It's not a different
It's
topic
uncomfortable to
first.
accept that rhetoric like this against Muslims directly links to attacks
Why
against
can you not accept,
mosques?
Kai, that the schools being recorded, for example, and the fact that Jews are being persecuted are of the same issue? It's because of what you have imported into this country via Tony Blair, your idol. You did this to us. You betrayed Britain and our country, and you betrayed everyone that you just said needs support and defended.
Also, what you're doing, Kai, is part of this gaslighting that Alex was talking about. You're dividing the elephant up into small parts so that we only look at one bit at a time. Actually, what's going on here is the question we need to answer is there a problem that certain cultures are not compatible with ours? Does that lead to all of these disparate things that you say Darren brings together? Is it one thing? But if you keep splitting it up, no one will talk about it.
I think we can answer that question. We know that these cultures are not compatible with ours. I think the second question is why are we tolerating it? Like, Darren, you put that grab up before and you didn't actually mention it. That headline in the Telegraph said that the police referred to immigrant men hanging around schools as a cultural issue.
Yes.
Why are we tolerating this? And I know why we're tolerating it, because of this whole diversity.
Well, just for radio listeners, it says asylum seekers loitering outside school is a cultural issue. That's what the police dismissed it as. They wouldn't say that about anything. If it was white men hanging around a school, you can bet your bottom dollar that they'd call it what it is.
Back and think about how absolutely abhorrent that statement is. I don't know why we are accepting this other than
I'll tell you, I'll tell you why I think we're accepting it, and it's been the reason why we didn't report the grooming gangs. Yes. It's because people thought it was racist to say something, and they were told you were a racist to say something, and the police were fearful of actually arresting these people for those sorts of crimes. And the reality is I think, Dr. Renee, you also nailed it, is we keep on importing all these people into the country. We don't check cultural compatibility, and then we wonder why there's you talked about attacks on Muslims, but there's been over 1,000 something increased attacks on Jewish communities. That is also a statistic we can't ignore. So there's clearly a cultural divide that's happening across our country that isn't just isolated to Muslims, and I don't think that there should be religious violence against anybody for their religion. There's more good Muslims in this country than there are bad ones, but unfortunately it seems to me that this mass rise in immigration is bringing some people here with extremely powerful...
I'd also like Kai to tell us about the Christian gangs that are getting together and raping our children.
Look, I know you're being facetious.
Do they not exist?
I know you're being facetious,
right. So it's almost like it is an issue, isn't it, Kai?
I just really...
Thank you, that was an admission. Yes, it is.
Well, I think there's a real cultural issue.
On that bombshell, I'm going to leave it there. Kai was gazumped. Brilliant. Now, still to come tonight, Will is going to ask, are we finally seeing the end of diversity roles in the workplace? Next, Kai's going to give us his take on Donald Trump's decision to freeze foreign aid, exempting Egypt and Israel. You're with the Saturday 5. We're live on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's going to stay quite changeable over the next couple of days with some outbreaks of heavy rain and some showers and some strong winds too, although there will perhaps be some glimmers of sunshine in the middle. We have this weather front situated out to the west of the UK at the moment. That pushes its way eastwards through the rest of this evening, bringing some quite heavy downpours, particularly to parts of northern England and Scotland, and this perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground. Some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Wales and England, but this generally a little lighter and more scattered than further north. Some clear skies developing behind, and that will likely turn those temperatures quite chilly overnight, dropping below zero across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. So there may be some ice around to start on Sunday. It will be a bit of a cloudier start, though, across parts of Wales and southern England through Sunday morning. We've got this area of heavy rain arriving across the very far southwest, so a damp start to the day for Devon and Cornwall. For parts of Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland, a dry and bright start to the morning with some sunshine around. But further north, there will still be some showers, and again, these likely falling as sleet and snow, mainly over the high ground, but perhaps to lower levels for a time. As we then go through the rest of Sunday morning, that area of rain pushes its way northwards, spreading across much of the UK by the time we get to the afternoon. Some quite heavy downpours likely, and some blustery showers following in behind on that brisk southwesterly wind. That southwesterly wind does draw in some slightly milder air, so temperatures in the far southwest turning a little milder, 9 to 11 degrees, but elsewhere around about average, so 6 to 8 degrees quite widely. To start on Monday then, we have got low pressure across the UK, so heavy blustery showers still feeding in from the southwest. These likely to merge to longer spells of rain across northern parts, and plenty of showers as well across the far north of Scotland. So an unsettled start to the new working week, and that theme continues through much of next week. However, there are some hints that we'll see high pressure building and turning a little bit chillier by next weekend.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for your messages about tonight's topics. Ivor has a warning for the entire panel. He says, if Starmer brings in his blasphemous Islamophobia laws, how are we going to have, and I quote, the open and frank discussions, regardless of societal sensitivities, which are necessary to get to the bottom of the Southport murders or the rape gang scandal?
We're not, are we? That's the point.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah. It is. It's a very good point. Someone's just suggested that Kai, they was probably assumed that it's Kai with a K, but it's not, it's Kai with a C. But anyway, you remember Kia, the orange squash drink?
Yeah.
Did you ever have that as a kid? No?
Yeah.
They said they're not buying it ever again. So you've put them off an orange squash.
It does sound like Keir Starmer as well, doesn't it? So.
Right, now it's time for our next debate. Who's going to go next?
That'll be me.
Must you?
I will go ahead.
Finished. Right, move on.
Right, come on off, come.
No, look, we'll go to foreign climes. This week, Marco Rubio, the new Secretary of State in the United States, halted all foreign aid from the United States, barring two countries, to Egypt and to Israel. Now, this is a moral abdication of duty on catastrophic levels, and it will leave the world poorer, less educated, and hungrier for it. Now, why do we administer foreign aid? Well, first of all, there's a pragmatic point. It helps us build alliances, it makes us stronger and safer. Now, to this point, who accepted in 1951 the most foreign aid from the United States? France, Italy, Germany, the Netherlands, and yes, you guessed it, the United Kingdom. Secondly, there's a humanitarian point here. Think about Khadija, an 11-year-old in Mali who wasn't able to access education until foreign aid came to her rescue. Think about Mbalawala in Tanzania. That simple tap water was a lifesaver in that country and in that village. Now, we can change the lives of millions and give hope to the hopeless with our embrace of foreign aid. Is it difficult to administer? Yes. Does that mean we should give it up? No. And so I say those with the broader shoulders should carry the heaviest burden. And if we don't do so, others with broad shoulders, like China, will surely fill the gap.
That sounded like a pitch for a charity there. Would you like to sponsor Amalumba?
Can I just add a few other bits in there? Think about that little K-pop band in North Korea who would never have been able to make their CD if our foreign aid hadn't gone to them.
Or the African Spice Girls. The African Spice Girls.
Can I just make this point? Because the right wing always will throw in these edge cases of seemingly richer countries who receive foreign aid. But the results are clear. You look at US foreign aid.
May I ask?
Let me finish. You look at US foreign aid and look at the countries that receive the most: Ukraine, Israel, Jordan, Egypt, Ethiopia, Somalia, Nigeria, Congo, Afghanistan, Kenya, Mozambique. You can go on.
You haven't
These are edge cases,
hang on,
Renee.
just in Renee's defence, you haven't got what she was saying there correct, because she's not suggesting that African nations, not all of them, are rich, wealthy nations, but she is suggesting that spending precious taxpayers' money on an Ethiopian Spice Girls, I remember it,
that's right,
was ludicrous. And by the way, your mate, David Lammy, uploaded today a video saying we mustn't forget Sudan, of him walking through Sudan like he was Jesus Christ in the desert. And actually, I would argue, Sudan, right, they rejected British rule and colonialism in their country.
Yes.
They were left to do exactly what we did, by the way, which is to lift yourself up from your bootstraps, not have some despotic communist as your leader, and to make your own way in the world. This trade, not aid.
This is the point. Kai, you just listed off a bucket load of poor African countries that have been poor for decades and decades, that have been getting huge amounts of aid for decades and decades, and it hasn't done anything. And the reason it hasn't done anything is because it creates a culture of dependency in these countries where they don't have any incentive to get off the teat of wealthier nations. It's now well established that foreign aid does not work if you are trying to lift prosperity. The only answer to those countries is actually to improve business conditions. It is not to give them free money.
So it hasn't done anything? But what's happened to global poverty in the last few decades? Can you tell me?
That's as a result of decreasing regulation and a capitalist global system.
So you say.
OK, can I ask you this then? Can I ask you this, because just a slightly different tone? The American government is in debt in trillions and trillions of dollars. We are in debt by
almost 100% of GDP.
100% of GDP. Yeah. Why do we now? I mean, we're a very generous country. We've been giving for a very, very long time. Is it not about time we say, OK, it's down to you? We were funding India to have a space program. For goodness sake, Guy. I mean, come on, when you look at that stuff, you must think, OK, something is wrong here.
Look. On the India question, most of the foreign aid that is given to India is actually on bilateral programs that look into and study how development aid can be best put. So actually,
we don't need to be funding a country that's got a space program, Kai.
But
I know, but you have to answer the question.
I agree. I agree. It's difficult to imagine that actually, when we're struggling back home, that we should be giving money elsewhere. But the problem is global safety, as we've seen in the last few years and decades, equals UK safety. Now, if there is a war elsewhere, if some countries are unsafe, inevitably we see the citizens of that country come to the UK and have to take resources from Europe, from the UK.
How much?
So yes, it's right that we keep supporting.
Right, Kai, this isn't the Kai Wilshaw show. We have not. How much have we given to Africa, and how many Africans have come and got over to Italy to come here?
I can't tell you the numbers. Can you tell me the numbers?
Well, I can tell you that every single billion quid that we've ever given them clearly ain't worked, has it?
And also, Kai, Wales is on its bottom now, having lost its steel industry. Guess where they're building it now?
Right.
India.
Jeff has emailed in and Jeff says, somebody tell Kai the US aid pause is pending value for money checks. So I don't know what Kai's got against value for money checks. It's because he doesn't care about the value of money as long as there's virtue signalling. No, you can't. All right. Now, my friends, still to come tonight, we're going to be joined by a Member of Parliament to tell us about the controversy surrounding government approval for a solar farm.
This is a good one.
Headed by a Labour Party donor.
This is a good one.
There. Next, though, Willie asks, are we finally seeing the end of diversity roles in the workplace? It's got him in a real tizzy. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
More showers to come across Cyprus this weekend, although it does look drier by Monday. There's more wet weather to come across parts of Spain and Portugal too. There are those showers clearing by Monday. Plenty of fine and sunny weather over the central Mediterranean. Good-looking day on Sunday across Sicily and Sardinia. Some sunshine for the Balearics, but more rain heading into southern Spain and Portugal. Plenty of sunshine in the Canaries this weekend, and things are warming up into the mid-20s on Monday in Tenerife.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
People living with obesity are people, and they deserve the right for treatment and care as much as anyone else. What we need to understand is that obesity is a chronic condition, or a disease, as some people call it. It's not a choice. And this is the bit that people really struggle with, is that people think this is a lifestyle choice and people have done this to themselves. What we now know is the science and the evidence shows us that this isn't a choice. People have genetic predispositions for living with obesity. What we need to do is be a bit more compassionate and caring to people that live with obesity and support them to make healthier choices, not actually just discriminate and tell them that they're doing something wrong when, you know, if I had asthma, for instance, you wouldn't be saying the same thing to me there. But then it's exactly the same.
Usually, if you're going for an operation of some form or other, there'll be often there is a criteria. So my mother, she had a knee operation. They wanted to make sure her blood pressure was right and all these things. This is, I mean, to hear somebody say that obesity isn't a choice just because you've got genetic predisposition to it, it's just exactly why people seem to be legitimising being overweight. Ozempic has proved that people are overweight because they eat too much. Because Ozempic tells you to stop eating, it makes you think that you've eaten and makes you feel full, so you don't eat. You may be predisposed to anything, but you also have a large percentage of responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. So absolutely, it is in the patient's best interests, because if you're overweight, it'll take you longer to heal. You're more likely to have complications, the same if you smoke, and also the outcomes are usually better. So for a smoker, if you quit, say 4 weeks before surgery, your 25%, your risk is lower of respiratory complications. So this is literally, of course, it's discriminatory, because you have to decide, you have to prioritise the people that are likely to survive the operations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you for your messages. We'll get to some of those later. Now, though, it's time for our next debate. And by process of elimination, it can only be Mr. Willie. Take it away.
Thank you, Darren. What we've seen in the last week in the US has been nothing less than extraordinary. With the strokes of a pen, Donald Trump has blown up the liberal progressive orthodoxy that has been foisted upon us by the elites for decades. Gender ideology, done. Open borders, done. Climate zealotry, done. Brendan O'Neill very memorably called this the bonfire of BS, and the most egregious piece of BS to be set ablaze in the last week has been the DEI cult. We've actually got a clip of Donald Trump announcing that he is going to get rid of DEI in all government agencies. Let's good thing. You can tart up DEI with whatever flowery words you want. It is fundamentally about discrimination. It is about atoning for the sins of the past with discrimination in the present. Which brings me to the sad and sorry state of the UK, which is the HQ of the global DEI grift. We have more DEI employees in this country per capita than anywhere else in the world. My plea to the UK now, to the people of the UK, because Keir Starmer sure as heck isn't going to follow Trump's lead, you no longer have to tolerate this nonsense. To the CEO who's been bullied by a 25-year-old HR manager to put in DEI departments, get rid of them. To the employees who are doing unconscious bias training, push back. If you're in the pub and you're hearing people talk about diversity, equity and inclusion, call it out for what it is, a fraud. Trump's been fantastic in doing that this week. Will we follow in the UK is the question.
Will, I want to know what pubs you've been going to, because every pub I go to, no one's talking about diversity, equity and inclusion. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, no, that's fair. The odd Shoreditch establishment may have the equitable conversation, but that's about
All right, Kai, come on. You are here because you are a diversity, equity and inclusion hire.
Am I? Yes.
I am joking. He is that I am joking.
Surprise me.
We don't do that on this channel.
Look, you and your ilk love to import this culture war from the United States back into the UK. But let's actually look at the business case for DEI. Companies last year in the Supreme Court, in an amicus brief, said that there are still real and tangible results from these policies. MasterCard, Apple, Salesforce. Right. The problem is not translating it into the UK context where working class people...
All I can say is Trump is doing great things. We're going to get to our interview with the MP. It's a very important story, this. You won't want to miss it. See you after this.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's going to stay quite changeable over the next couple of days with some outbreaks of heavy rain and some showers and some strong winds too, although there will perhaps be some glimmers of sunshine in the middle. We have this weather front situated out to the west of the UK at the moment. That pushes its way eastwards through the rest of this evening, bringing some quite heavy downpours, particularly to parts of northern England and Scotland, and this perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground. Some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Wales and England, but this generally a little lighter and more scattered than further north. Some clear skies developing behind, and that will likely turn those temperatures quite chilly overnight, dropping below zero across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland, so there may be some ice around to start on Sunday. It will be a bit of a cloudier start, though, across parts of Wales and southern England through Sunday morning. We've got this area of heavy rain arriving across the very far southwest, so a damp start to the day for Devon and Cornwall. For parts of Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland, a dry and bright start to the morning with some sunshine around. But further north, there will still be some showers, and again, these likely falling as sleet and snow, mainly over the high ground, but perhaps to lower levels for a time. As we then go through the rest of Sunday morning, that area of rain pushes its way northwards, spreading across much of the UK by the time we get to the afternoon. Some quite heavy downpours likely and some blustery showers following in behind on that brisk southwesterly wind. That southwesterly wind does draw in some slightly milder air, so temperatures in the far southwest turning a little milder, 9 to 11 degrees, but elsewhere around about average, so 6 to 8 degrees quite widely. To start on Monday then, we have got low pressure across the UK, so heavy blustery showers still feeding in from the southwest. These likely to merge to longer spells of rain across northern parts and plenty of showers as well across the far north of Scotland. So an unsettled start to the new working week, and that theme continues through much of next week. However, there are some hints that we'll see high pressure building and turning a little bit chillier by next weekend.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Lee Anderson's Real World. Fridays from 7 p.m.
Aaron McLean, the goal machine here, used to play for Peterborough United. You bagged loads of goals for them back in the day. But I've got a bone to pick with you, young man. You scored at the City ground against Nottingham Forest for, was it Hull City?
For Hull City, yeah.
Why did you do that?
Well, that was my job, unfortunately. I must say, that was actually one of my favourite goals.
Was it really?
Because I remember, obviously, playing at the City ground, unbelievable stadium, historic.
It is great.
So, and we beat you 1-0.
OK, no need to rub it in. These sports clubs, whether it's football or rugby or whatever, should offer two alternatives, either a professional footballer, or if you don't quite make it, you can still go and play football at a lower level, but have a career as well, maybe be an electrician or a plumber.
100%. You know, listen, I've had multiple conversations with various different people, whether it's the PFA or whether it's clubs. Even players who do have careers, you know, there's so many that don't make it and don't quite make it to the level or only play at a lower level. There's so many that do have long careers, but once you come to the end of that, you've spent, you know, for me, I spent 20 years as a professional footballer. Once I finished playing, what do you then do for the rest of your life? You know, at 35, once you retire, you still have to have a purpose in life. Yeah. But I'd almost be starting from ground zero. I'm fortunate that I went into coaching and then went into the media.
Yeah, that's good.
But for every one of me, there's hundreds that don't. And I've got so many friends who, I've got to say, you know, have really, really struggled on the, you know, mental health side.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually, because you go from, like, playing in stadiums, big stadiums, small stadiums, crowds, singing your name, and all that sort of stuff, that adulation, the buzz of winning games, and, you know, the downs of losing games, and you go from that to sort of nothing when you finish. I mean, that's a big come down there.
It's a huge come down.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5, my word. No one was harmed off air, my friends. Well, we've got a very special interview coming up in just a second, my friends, with alongside, of course, Will, Renee, me, Alex and Kai. And the MP is Gareth Davies, who is in the shadow cabinet, my friends, and he's going to tell us about some controversy surrounding government approval for a solar farm headed by a Labour Party donor. The BBC had him on this week. Tut, tut, tut. Then in the Bunch of Five, we're going to delve into everything from smartphone bans to Alex's mystery non-departure from GB News. It's on more than the adverts at the minute. And 2 chessboards in car parks, the things Kai gets up to. It's 7 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. And also to come, Will's going to burst with national pride. Willie bursts with national pride to mark Australia Day. And we'll speak to a Republican member of Congress about Donald Trump's first week. It's been lightning speed. And Alex and Kai are going to scrap it out over whether the left can ever see off the threat of reform. Then we'll be answering your questions in Ask the Five. Please do send them through to gbnews.com/yoursay. First of all, though, it's your Saturday Night News with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, a very good evening to you. Our headlines. 4 female Israeli soldiers held by the terror group Hamas have been reunited with their families. The emotions here clear to see as the 4 young women met their loved ones in hospital in Tel Aviv earlier, following 477 days in captivity. Karina Ariev, Daniela Gilboa, Naama Levy, all aged 20, and the 19-year-old Liri Albag were serving with the Israel Defense Forces when they were captured on October the 7th, 2023. Well, they were released earlier today in Gaza City, surrounded by armed Hamas fighters, who then accompanied them to Red Cross vehicles before they were handed over to the IDF at the border. Well, as part of the agreement, Israel has also released another 200 Palestinian prisoners. This is the second exchange since a ceasefire began last weekend, although 70 of those accused of the most serious crimes are understood to be due for deportation via Egypt to countries like Turkey and Qatar. A 14-year-old has been charged with the murder of the Birmingham schoolboy Leo Ross, who was stabbed in a country park on Tuesday. The youth, who can't be named because of his age, was arrested around 4 hours after the 12-year-old Leo suffered fatal injuries on a riverside path in the Hall Green area. His family have released a statement describing Leo as an amazing, kind boy who was loved so much by everyone. 3 teenagers have died and a 4th has suffered life-threatening injuries after a car hit a tree near Wakefield in West Yorkshire. They were travelling near the village of West Breton when the car left the road and crashed on Friday night. The 18-year-old driver and 2 19-year-old passengers died. 2 other men in the car were taken to hospital, one of whom is in critical condition. The other has injuries that are not believed to be life-threatening. Now, travellers have been continuing to face a disruption today in the aftermath of Storm Eowyn as efforts to clear up the damage done by Friday's hurricane-force winds continue. Thousands of properties were left without power. Travel has been disrupted across Northern Ireland and much of Scotland, with trains and ferries suspended and many roads closed as well, with weather warnings remaining in place until tomorrow. It comes after those winds that reached 100 miles per hour yesterday, left 1 person in the Republic of Ireland dead. He's been named as Casper Dudek, and some 460,000 customers in Ireland were without power earlier on, although authorities say that has now improved, and Network Rail says most of its network is back up and running. WH Smith's in talks to sell its entire high street business in Britain more than 230 years after opening its first shop in London. In a statement today, the firm said it was exploring potential options, including a possible sale. The company's high street arm comprises around 500 stores, which employ 5,000 people. WH Smith is understood to be ready to confirm that plan to the London Stock Exchange on Monday. Now, farmers have been staging a national day of unity in a bid to protect the sector. It comes as pressure mounts on the government to halt the controversial inheritance tax laws that could see some farmers forced to sell their land. The National Farmers Union and indeed Conservative MPs have been warning that many farmers are at breaking point.
Farmers are on their knees. They can't pass their farms to their children. They're already struggling to make ends meet. We have more suicides for farmers. And for individual workers in pretty much any profession, they struggle with poverty, they struggle with years of all of the impact of the climate change sort of measures that have been put in place. They are just struggling to make ends meet. And now this new Labour government has come in to destroy their way of life, to destroy the British countryside. Who is going to protect our beautiful countryside and our way of life without the farmer?
And you're up to date now on GB News. More from me in about an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Aaron. It's lovely to hear that accent once again, isn't it? Now, it's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5, my friends, and I can promise that you're in for a very lively 2 hours, especially in the next one. I don't know what's going to happen there, believe me. I'll need a drink to get through it. Unfortunately, my tight boss has allowed me to have one. I've got many comments to read out before we get to our tonight's big interview, which I'll tell you about in a second. Anne says, oh my goodness, Willie, I loved that monologue. KC says DEI stands for didn't earn it. Ooh. Wendy says if Kai was going into an operating theatre, would the operating team that was diverse, inclusive and equal be chosen by him or a qualified doctor? What would you prefer?
Would you want them to be the best?
Why not both?
Well,
we can have it all.
Dan says, Darren, Willie is totally right to congratulate Trump for his stance on DEI. Starmer needs booting out. There's only 2 genders, says Dan, but everyone needs a Willie. Right.
Oh, Christ.
Tonight's guest is going to be like, just tuning in, what on earth's going on in this show? Anyway, right, we're going to crack on with tonight's big interview. Ed Miliband has been criticised, of course he's Energy Secretary, after approving an application for a huge solar farm in Lincolnshire, owned by a company that's, it's produced rather, it's going to be built by a company that's owned by the millionaire Labour donor Dale Vince. I think he gave them something like £4 million in the last election.
Five. I think it was 5. Yeah.
I've rounded it down. Well, after Labour's been in power, Rachel Reeves, it's not worth that anymore.
No, true.
Now, Heckington Fen Solar Park, it was approved yesterday, and it's since emerged that it's, of course, owned by Mr Vince's green energy business, Ecotricity. Ecotricity, Conetricity. Now, the decision... He would disagree with that statement. The decision has angered local residents and councillors who have accused the Energy Secretary of pandering to Mr Vince as he donated that £5 million to the Labour Party in the run-up to last year's general election. Well, to discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome the MP for Grantham and Bourne, Gareth Davies. Gareth, thank you very much for your... I should also say that you are indeed in the Shadow Cabinet, so many congratulations on that. Now, Gareth, I have to ask you this question. Are you happy to see prime agricultural land in your constituency? You know, Labour are coming after the farmers and now they're going to pave over this prime agricultural land with a load of solar panels that are cack useless, if I can say that at this hour.
No, I'm not happy about it. And this is a pattern of development that is happening across the countryside, whether it's in Lincolnshire or elsewhere in the country. And I think most people are getting a bit of fed up with it. This is, for example, the second massive project in Lincolnshire. We had Mallard Pass last year. And it's on, as you say, prime agricultural land. 49% of the development in the Heckington Fen solar farm will be on 1 to 3A agricultural land. I think most people would agree we need to diversify our energy sources, we need to be energy secure, but they question why we can't build solar panels on roofs or on brownfield sites, why we have to keep decimating our farmland to do it. And of course, all this is down to Ed Miliband. Quite frankly, he's the one that signed this off. He is completely obsessed with decarbonising the grid by 2030. He promised before the election that he would cut everybody's energy bills by £300, but frankly, this is going to do the opposite. Energy bills are already going up. They're going to go up further. So, yeah, Darren, people are pretty unhappy about this.
Well, hang on, Gareth. I have to put it to you, my friend, that actually it was Boris Johnson that Boris Johnson went gangbusters on net zero, but it was Theresa May who, of course, signed us up to the net zero obligations. Now, Labour are talking about expanding airports and all these other lovely things. Well, good luck with that, because they'll be challenged, of course, in court over the net zero obligations. And I'm afraid it was your party that did that to our nation. It is an economic noose around the neck of the nation.
So I think most people would agree and not deny that climate change is a thing. I think most people want to see us be more energy secure, less dependent on foreign sources of energy, and yes, to get to net zero eventually. But it's the path you take to get there. And while Theresa May did sign us up to a 2050 legally binding target, I would argue that the Conservatives, particularly in the last part of our 14 years in power, were taking a much more pragmatic approach to take us to net zero, making sure that families and businesses didn't pay disproportionately, that bills weren't being borne by the British public disproportionately. Labour have completely gone in the other direction. I think it's right that we highlight this, whether it's on electric vehicles, whether it's on the boiler tax, or indeed on the subject we're talking about today, which is solar farms.
I'm afraid, Gareth, what you are saying here is that the Conservative Party stands to be just a little bit less naff than the Labour Party, right? You said there, oh, well, you did it in a more sensible way. Well, you still did something that I would argue has actually held back the British economy and ensured that sky-high energy bills are the future that we can sadly look forward to.
Well, look, I would take issue with that. We've been very clear. I personally have been a great champion of oil and gas. I think it's absolutely crazy what the Labour Party are doing to our domestic oil and gas industry. While we took some measures that you won't agree with, I think the broad principle is that we realise in the Conservative Party that we're going to need oil and gas for many, many years to come. And anybody who wants to transition, you know, they need that domestic supplies. Labour don't agree with that. They want to decimate our domestic oil and gas and replace it with Chinese manufactured solar panels. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that, I mean, what will the Conservative Party be doing? Will you be actually arguing that the Labour Party need this decision to be investigated?
Well, I've put out today that I think it's, you know, worthy of questioning, to say the least, what engagement Ed Miliband has had with Dale Vince, who has donated £5.4 million to the Labour Party. It is not right that you have massive donors to political parties, you know, getting these things signed off without a bit of scrutiny, and that's all I'm asking for. I want to know exactly, have they had conversations about this project? Have they had conversations and engagement about Dale Vince's projects, you know, and plans around the country? We've got to have some separation, otherwise trusts will continue to be eroded in politics and politicians. And so when we're back next week, that's what I'll be asking the Energy Secretary. And I think a lot of people, not just locally, but nationally, will want to know the answers to this.
Question. Will?
Yeah, Gareth, so the position for the Conservatives seems to be we're still committed to net zero, but we're just going to do it slightly slower and in a more sensible way. Given that Trump has now ditched that, he said it's a scam, he said he's going to go all in on prioritising America and their energy resources, doesn't the Conservative Party now feel, well, and Labor, feel out of place with the vibe and the mood on energy policy around the rest of the world?
No, look, let's be really clear. As I was saying earlier, we believe in bolstering our domestic supplies of oil and gas. We believe in making sure that investment by oil and gas companies is made, and that's why we had the investment allowances that we did that Labour have now scrapped. But we also agree that it's right that we become more energy secure. That's why we invested in offshore wind, for example, becoming one of the largest places in the world for offshore wind farms. That's a good thing. That, you know, harnessing any energy sources that we can in this country is the right thing to do. But what we don't believe in, where we disagree with Labour, is that ordinary families and businesses should disproportionately pay for that. We don't believe that needs to happen. We don't believe that you can put these added costs onto the British public and not, and bring them with you on this journey to energy security. We think, we can bolster oil and gas, we can bolster nuclear in particular. That's how we become more energy secure, and that's what we're about.
Yeah, Kai, as I'm afraid, Gareth, I've got to bring in a staunch Labour voice. Now, Kai, I'm assuming you're going to say that this is an act of altruism, right? That actually Mr. Vince and they're saving the planet, right?
Yes, and absolutely.
Oh, for goodness sake, I was
absolutely. And Will made a good point earlier. Surprised to hear that, but he made the point that the Tories essentially want a slower and quote-unquote more sensible version of what the Labour Party is doing. Now, this, I think, this development is emblematic of what the Labour Party and the Labour government is trying to do. Go for it. Growth at all costs. Whether or not that means peeing off some rural voters out there in the blue belt of England, then so be it. But actually, growing energy projects and so on is exactly the right thing to do, and we should be ambitious.
Gareth, I've got to let you come back to that. That's the Labour Party response.
Well, it just sums it up. Look, today, farmers have been out all over the country protesting about the family farm tax, which means that they're not going to be able to pass on their farm to future generations. That's going to hurt us in another way when it comes to security, and that's food security. This is all linked. This is all part of an onslaught on our farming community, on rural communities.
It is.
Who deserve a voice and, quite frankly, haven't had a good enough voice for many decades. It's time that changes, and that's why I'm speaking out this evening, and that's why next week when we get back, I'm going to be holding Ed Miliband to account.
Just briefly then, just to end, in a sentence, if you would, because we're short of time, would you argue that this is ideological, that all of these things are linked? The assault on farming land, and actually the reason that they're doing this farming tax in the first place is so that this land becomes available even?
I think, look, the first thing I say is I think they just do not understand rural communities. Labour do not understand rural communities. They don't understand or care, it seems, about farming and farmland. I think this is partly, or actually mainly, down to an ideological obsession with decarbonising the grid by 2030, which may not even be possible, which will cost families, it'll cost farms, it'll cost businesses. We will do everything we can to oppose it whenever we can.
All right, OK. Grantham and Bourne MP there for the Conservative Party, Gareth Davies, who's also Shadow Financial Secretary. Thank you very much for giving up time on your Saturday evening. Now, still to come tonight, in the Bunch of Five, we're going to delve into everything from smartphone bans to Alex's mystery non-departure from GB News. He announced it in a newspaper. I kid you.
I didn't announce it. More fake news.
But next, Alex and Kai are going to scrap it out whether the left can see off the reform threat. Kai's going to argue that Nigel Farage is the future. I joke. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Lauren, let's start with this, shall we? How children's TV may be harming, not helping young minds.
Yeah, so this is an article in the Express today, a big double-page spread as a result of some new research in a new book that's coming out by a child psychologist, saying that children's television, and I think perhaps more importantly, the way that children consume television and video product now is perhaps not as healthy for them as we would hope it would be. And there's quite some distance from children's television of the past, of the sort of the Bagpuss and Clangers and Ivor the Engine era. And I think what's interesting about this is particularly the how children's television is consumed angle, because children are now put in front of screens significantly more often than they were, certainly when I think we were growing up. The content that they are consuming is not great for their brains and their learning and development, which Floella Benjamin of children's television fame is now leading a big crusade to say that some of this is really, really bad for children.
These days, they're not watching the TV that we all watched when we were growing up. They're not even watching GB News in the morning.
What are they thinking?
Would you believe it? But they are watching this absolute drivel all day long on YouTube, and because obviously all our TVs are now connected to the internet, or they're getting TikTok on their TV. It's not even, so they don't even necessarily have to have smartphones or iPads. They can just watch this stuff on TV, and it is rubbish. They are watching it and they're obsessed with it. Oh, God, Skibbity Toilet or something. Have you heard of this?
No.
No? Well, you'll have viewers who have got... who are parents of sort of 13-year-olds, and this Skibbity Toilet thing is... They're all obsessed with it, and this is a really annoying sort of theme tune or thing that they sing at you.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for your emails about tonight's topics. Danielle has written in, and Danielle says, Darren, what shade of oak is your tan? My friends, it's my tribute to Donald J. Trump. So, that's what it is.
Can you do the hair next week?
My hair, what, dye it, bleach it, and then comb it
and then
over
push it
or
forward.
Whatever. Push it forward. Yes, that's right. All right. Renee didn't get a bite at the cherry in that round with the shadow Financial Secretary Gareth Davies. What did you think about what he had to say?
So there were a few things. I mean, firstly, as we discussed in the break, the Tories and Labour on this subject are still wedded to net zero, which is a failed idea that is going to impoverish the UK. Yeah. The other thing that people don't often know about the UK is only 37% of our farmland is of a good enough quality that we can grow crops on it. The rest is only good enough for grass. That means this particular development will take a massive slice of that out. Where's our food going to come from?
I agree. But you know what, Renee? If it was the Tory party in government approving something like this, after receiving a massive donation like that, the Labour Party would be the first ones crying out that there is corruption at the heart of government.
So do we say that major donors to parties are not allowed to get government contracts?
It's an interesting question. Right, I'm afraid, though, we haven't got time to answer it because it's time for this instead. Indeedy ding, ding, ding. It's time for tonight's main event. Health Secretary Wes Streeting has warned that Reform UK leader Nigel Farage represents a populist threat, pushing a miserablist, declinist vision for Britain's future. Have a listen.
The populist right are coming for us, and we need to be serious about beating them. The crux of Farage's argument is this: what was possible in the 20th century isn't possible in the 21st. It's a miserablist, declinist vision for Britain's future. People shouldn't have to choose between a health service that treats them on time and an NHS free at the point of use. That's a poverty of ambition for our country, and Labour utterly rejects it.
Oh, I don't know about you, but I get the feeling that they're a little bit rattled. Now, this, of course, comes as Farage's party has topped a national opinion poll for the first time this week, leading on 26% of the vote, 4% ahead of Labour. I don't know who's still voting for them. Mr Streeting, though, has said that the only way to stop the reform surge is to reform the NHS and fix the failure of public services. So, my friends, yeah, well, plenty of them. Hot air.
Yeah.
So, can the Labour Party see off the increasing reform threat? That's what the two of these guys are going to debate tonight. Seconds out, my friends, Alex Armstrong and Kai Wilshaw. Which one of you's going first, by the way? Kai's going first.
I'll go ahead.
Go make yourself a cup of tea. Round one, ding, ding, ding. Take it away, Kai.
Look, I'm so glad that Secretary of State for Health, Wes Streeting, has come out and said this. Because actually what we are in desperate need of, on the left and in the Labour Party is some ambition. And also, and what he's called for later on in the speech, you didn't see the clip of this, is we need to start fighting a battle of ideas. Now, why are those things important? Number one, because, as he says, Nigel Farage and Reform are painting a miserablest picture of Britain. But, number two, Reform represent this grab bag of grievances and ideological failures that they pull together to try and make an argument without actually having a coherent argument against it. And if the Labour Party take that fight to the right, they will win. Now, I also agree with Wes Streeting. We underestimate Reform and the right at our peril. So let's have this battle of ideas, and I'm certain that the left and the Labour Party will win.
Well, fantastic stuff. I think you nailed it right at the end there. You do need to have a battle of ideas because your ideas are dead on arrival. That Labour's vision for Britain is declinist. I mean, just look at our country in the last 6 months. We've got businesses liquidating at record rates. We've got taxes soaring beyond anything we could possibly have imagined. But of course, Wes is saying this because they're scared. They're running scared. He's in a seat that he's probably going to lose in the next election with 500 votes in it. So I'm not surprised, frankly, that he's trying to take the battle to the party that is sweeping and surging in every single poll. Reform is coming out top trumps. But let's have a little look at, Wes Streeting's rhetoric. He calls this declinist. He calls it politically charged, ideological. Well, in that same speech, Wes Streeting said that we are structurally racist, that we had race riots, and he doesn't like ideologically driven policies. He just outlined some of them there, didn't he? This is the problem with the uni party, as we just saw from a Tory MP, and you see there from Wes Streeting. They are driven by ideological fantasies that the British public are rejecting now more than ever en masse. And time is on Reform's side. Every year, every few months, Reform are putting out well-thought-out policies that are just common sense, that every other member of the uni party seems to lack.
All right, I want to give Kai the chance to respond. So the challenge there that you're getting, Kai, is that everyone's saying this is desperate stuff from Labour, and one of our viewers, I want you to come back to this comment, actually says that if you listen to Starmer and indeed other members of the shadow cabinet, there is nothing more miserable than them.
No, and you know what? One of the things I enjoy about what Wes has said today is I agree. And the Labour Party has spent months trashing the last few years, and it's a vision of Britain that is quite bleak. Now, I think what you will see in the next few weeks, and what you've seen in the last week from Rachel Reeves, is a bit of a turnaround. Where what they're saying is...
You mean a U-turn?
Very convenient. But I think actually what you will see is a new picture of Britain. Now, we know already, all of us know, the state that the country is in, right? We don't need to talk about that. We need some ambition. We need a vision. And that's what I think the Labour Party will move to. And so you'll start to move away from what I agree has been quite a negative view of Britain and an understanding of what actually could be.
14 years Alex, of it. The other charge that is put to you then is that actually, because of your bashing of the Conservatives, all you're going to do is allow people like Wes to keep their seats because he split the vote.
Well, I think
he's going to lose.
Wes,
the pro.
Well, I was going to say, I think Wes has got different problems than Reform and the Tories. But look, at the end of the day, the Tory party's in constant decline at the moment. Kemi Badenoch can't take off, and she's clearly not hitting the ground running as opposition leader. When Nigel Farage, with just 5 MPs, is leading national conversations. The reality is that Labour spent 14 years declining and trashing this country, not just the last few months, 14 years.
And the thing is, Kai, I think you're absolutely right. People are feeling it anyway. They don't need. No, they don't need Labour to tell them how miserable their lives are, because they are. And it's the fact that they've now realised that everything is rubbish, nothing is going to change. They're going to turn away from Labour, they're going to turn away from the Tories, and they're going to turn to someone who can make the change.
I need to lie down after you telling Kai he's right.
Can I call out this nauseating talking point from Kai that Reform are just oppositional, they don't have any policies or a plan? They've got three really clear policy positions, which is promoting economic growth via deregulation, stopping mass migration and cutting net zero. And that's all they need to win the next election. And that's what the left doesn't understand.
You know what?
Those three things are all they need to win.
You know what, Will? I must say, and I'll put this to you as well, Kai, I have honestly never felt more depressed about the state of my country. So the idea that Labour are a party of optimism, they are the most miserablest bunch of, you know, they might as well dress up as the Grim Reaper. That's how I see them.
Well, we said this off air. I think it is exaggerated by the fact there is such optimism in the US at the moment, and we all wish we just had a government that was putting our interests first.
Absolutely. Kai.
Look, that's not all that Reform needs. And I've said for a long time that you shouldn't underestimate Reform, but they need much more than just three policies and the right sort of vibes to actually be a government in waiting in this country. Now, sorry, it takes much more than that to win an election. And one of the key things is an infrastructure, is grassroots support that translates into having sensible candidates across the country that can run for election credibly. And what you had in the last general election is many Reform candidates who were either ghosts or nobody knew existed or maybe had died.
May I just...
This idea that Reform is a government in waiting is ridiculous.
Hang on, just on the policy stuff. Let me just tackle you on the policy stuff. Labour didn't have any policies up until 6 months before the general election and was still massively leading in the polls, and they didn't win the general election. The Tories lost it, and that's exactly what Labour is going to happen. No, it's not easy enough to, because we all know that's the reality, because the Tory voters just didn't show up. Now, listen, those people are going to Reform, and slowly the Tories are going there, and even members of the Labour Party are going to Reform. I speak to them all the time. They are fed up. They are fed up, and they've seen through both parties and for what they are. That's why Reform is surging. That's why Nigel Farage is going to be the next Prime Minister.
Well, that's a bold claim, a bold claim. Would you put money on it?
Yeah, I will, actually.
Shall we?
Yeah. Do you want to put a bet?
Oh, what is the bet?
What can you afford?
You won't.
A pint. Let's do a pint.
Let's do a pint.
Prime Minister.
Yeah.
A pie?
A pint.
You've got pies on the mind.
I've got Greg's. It's because I opened the show talking about Greg's. But by the way, we've just had an email in saying I thought Will Kingston was the Willie. Turns out Kai is the Willie. Very witty, I must say. That came from... I've lost you.
Willie Lover 1.
Willie Lover, yes, yeah. Willie Lover. That's who it is. Oh, Stephen. It was Stephen that said that. Thank you very much, Stephen. Right, OK, still ahead. We're going to show you some of the biggest and funniest lefty meltdowns. Well, they're not all from Kai. But next, in the bunch of five, we'll give Will the opportunity to have a patriotic moment for Australia Day. Renee asks why we need a chessboard in a car park. And Alex busts the myth that he's in fact left GB News. He's been going to the papers asking them to write stories about him. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's going to stay quite changeable over the next couple of days, with some outbreaks of heavy rain and some showers and some strong winds too, although there will perhaps be some glimmers of sunshine in the middle. We have this weather front situated out to the west of the UK at the moment. That pushes its way eastwards through the rest of this evening, bringing some quite heavy downpours, particularly to parts of northern England and Scotland, and this perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground. Some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Wales and England, but this generally a little lighter and more scattered than further north. Some clear skies developing behind, and that will likely turn those temperatures quite chilly overnight, dropping below zero across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. So there may be some ice around to start on Sunday. It will be a bit of a cloudier start, though, across parts of Wales and southern England through Sunday morning. We've got this area of heavy rain arriving across the very far southwest, so a damp start to the day for Devon and Cornwall. For parts of Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland, a dry and bright start to the morning with some sunshine around. But further north, there will still be some showers, and again, these likely falling as sleet and snow, mainly over the high ground, but perhaps to lower levels for a time. As we then go through the rest of Sunday morning, that area of rain pushes its way northwards, spreading across much of the UK by the time we get to the afternoon. Some quite heavy downpours likely, and some blustery showers following in behind on that brisk southwesterly wind. That southwesterly wind does draw in some slightly milder air, so temperatures in the far southwest turning a little milder, 9 to 11 degrees, but elsewhere around about average, so 6 to 8 degrees quite widely. To start on Monday then, we have got low pressure across the UK, so heavy, blustery showers still feeding in from the southwest. These likely to merge to longer spells of rain across northern parts and plenty of showers as well across the far north of Scotland. So an unsettled start to the new working week, and that theme continues through much of next week. However, there are some hints that we'll see high pressure building and turning a little bit chillier by next weekend.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Now, you won't want to miss the triggered tantrums that are coming up very shortly, showing the lefties completely losing it outright. You won't want to miss it. Now, as always, thank you very much for your messages about tonight's topics. I'll get to some of those in a moment. Now, though, my friends, it's time for this. All right, Willie, what have you got?
Yeah, an update from the colonies, Darren. Tomorrow is Australia Day. On the 26th of January 1788, Captain Arthur Phillip arrived in Australia and planted the British flag there. It should be a day of celebration for Australians. Then there is a lot to be grateful for. Unfortunately, much like the UK, that self-flagellating instinct about our history and our culture has reached the land down under. This is how it's being reported by many news organisations in Australia.
Police are bracing for mass protests on Australia Day, with activists threatening to swamp the city and the Australian Open. Thousands of Invasion Day protesters will join pro-Palestine groups to march through the CBD as neo-Nazis descend on Melbourne Park.
The Invasion Day rally has become an annual event on Australia Day.
Invasion Day. I'm so sick of this small group of self-loathing leftists who are trying to talk down Western civilisation as much in Australia as in the United Kingdom. I'm absolutely sick of it. Australia has a lot to be grateful for. It has a lot to be grateful for the United Kingdom. We need to be more proud, not just of our respective countries, but of Western civilisation more generally.
Yeah, Kai said he's not going to Australia.
He'd be very much at home in an Invasion Day protest,
Yeah,
Guy. He'd be at the very front.
He would.
Outrageous.
All right, Renee, what have you got for us?
OK, so I'm all for encouraging people to get outside, to relax, to play table tennis, to even play chess if that's what they want to do. But a county council decided that they were going to take that up and put the chess table, which is a concrete table and 2 chairs, in a beautiful place so that people could sit, chill and just find their inner selves as they played chess. And that was actually in a car park. There it is.
Wow.
Can't really appreciate the
Lovely.
car park, which the cars are all around it, and I think that might even be a toilet there, who knows. I mean, nobody's been using it because, A, nobody knew it was going there, nobody got consulted. This is how our councils are spending our money. There is apparently a beautiful park just down the road where they could have put that, maybe with a little cover,
So weird.
but no, they decided to put it in a car park. What is wrong with these people who are spending our money on this rubbish?
Where are you meant to sit?
There's a big concrete seat one side and a bench the other. It's rubbish.
Yeah. And yet we're meant to believe that government should be allowed to spend billions of dollars on major infrastructure projects when they can't get a chess.
You've got Wes tweeting there saying, we're not declinists. We're putting chessboards in car parks, for goodness sake.
Looking forward to that AI policy from Keir Starmer.
Right, well, some sad news from me because WH Smith are reportedly looking to potentially sell all of its high street shops. Now, that would represent a absolutely massive deal, seismic for the high street and indeed your train stations and all the rest of it, because it's been going for 233 years. That's when it opened its flagship store. It just feels like, I know it's ridiculous to put so much into losing WH Smith, but
it's like Woolies, isn't it?
It's like everything going.
It's the decline of the high street, isn't it? You know, these young people who just do everything online. Some of us still like to go to a shop, to touch things before we buy them, look at them, and it's just an experience. It's a social experience, actually, because you generally shop with someone you know. I go out with my friends, my parents, and it's just all going.
But you know, the thing is, though, is that
they deserve it. Is it expensive?
Well, it's really expensive. Anyone who walks into WH Smith will know a packet of crisps is like £1.50 now.
Yeah.
And well, yeah, there you go.
She looks like
I do think it's become so overpriced. People are just opting to shop elsewhere.
But do people go to
It's a
Smith's
shame,
for
though.
crisps? Don't they go to Smith's for diaries and cards?
I don't know. Do they? Do they still do that? I don't think people do.
I went there today and bought wrapping paper.
So what are we going to get? Another
really ripped off, I can guarantee that.
What are we going to get? Another kind of mobile phone repair shop and a candy store?
The Turkish barber.
Or a Turkish barber, yeah.
No.
It's sad, though. It's really sad.
All right, Alex, what have you got?
Well, I made an emotional statement this week, and I'm very sorry to...
Paid for an emotional.
Fake news, as Donald Trump would say. Yeah, I was the subject of some fake news. Whilst I was actually here in the studio recording something for GB News, I was told I'd lost my job by the Daily Express. Yes, they put out this statement saying I had an emotional step back from my presenting role, which was, of course, a temporary measure to cover for some presenters while they were all off in Washington, D.C. And it was quite interesting because so many of you wrote to me saying, I'm so sad you're leaving, and I was really shocked because I hadn't heard about this article, and then it was just a few moments later. So I just thought that was quite a funny... has anyone else been subject to fake news before? Darren?
All the time.
No, but we don't pay publicists to put out fake news. The reason you were emotional was because your failed coup against Ben Leo
didn't work, yeah.
Exactly. Well, I failed coup against me.
Failed coup against every presenter of GB News. He doesn't discriminate.
Darren's only one food poisoning bout away from you stepping into that chair.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to step it up, I think. Don't you? Something stronger next time.
You know what's happened.
He did come back with a nice tan, though. So
yeah, I did. I did.
It's
like
jaundice.
Donald. I'm not yellow.
That's fake news.
Right, Kai,
here we
what
go.
have you got?
It's me, and for once I agree with the Tories. Look, this week the Tories are trying to amend the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill to end the use of mobile phones in breaks and in school more generally. Now, the Cumberland Community School in Newham, who put half of their students during exam time under a social media ban, saw a huge increase in grade 5 English and maths success. And what I'm saying is actually, you know, we all know these kids who are glued to their phones, are glued to their iPads. Shouldn't this initiative be rolled out nationally?
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But Labour have no plans to do that.
No, and I agree, and that's why I'm saying, you know, I agree with the Tories. Long live the written word.
I find it really bizarre, actually, that the data on mobile phones and the damage that they're doing to our children's speech, their attention span, the rise in ADHD is directly related to this, the rise in anxiety is related to this, and yet we still let them do it. We wouldn't let them smoke because it will kill them, but we let them do this.
Well, Dr. Renee, you've put it much better than I ever could, and indeed did. So thank you for making my point for me.
I mean, it's a good point, though, on the Labour. Why do you think they are just bereft of ideas?
Yeah, they love a ban.
They love a ban.
They do love a ban. And actually, you've criticised the Labour Party, so I do hope you realise you're off to the gulag.
I'm sure I won't be. I think I'm all right. No, I think they're just worried about not showing an embrace of technology. And actually, what we need in this country and what we lack is actually a nuanced approach, a nuanced discussion about technology, both its benefits and its ills, because there are ills, let's make no bones about it.
I think
but they're worried about being seen as...
Well, I would also say China...
Because of the years where the Labour Party is being painted as this sort of anti-business...
Yeah, but there are countries that have done this. Well, actually, actually China is one of them. They've actually turned, for under, I think it's under 16s. I can't remember what age the cutoff point is.
China.
But their whole TikTok. So you cue me up. I'm going to do it. Their whole TikTok is just science, maths, education. So rather than stopping them and saying you can't have it, they give them a custom version of it that forces them to learn, and their education rates are going through the roof.
And Bill has written in on what Renee had to show us with that chess piece in Nottingham, yes. And Bill says, Darren, I think that chessboard had a checkered past.
Oh, very good.
Bill.
Good.
And Beth says, good one, Kai.
Oh,
wow.
Goodness me.
Whoa.
I'll take the wins where I can get
down.
it.
Yeah. And she says, I'll expect my money in the post. No, she didn't say that. Right, OK, still ahead. We're going to be answering all of your questions in Ask the Five. No topics are off limits. What hell have you unleashed upon us this week?
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
More showers to come across Cyprus this weekend, although it does look dry out by Monday. There's more wet weather to come across parts of Spain and Portugal too. There are those showers clearing by Monday. Plenty of fine and sunny weather over the central Mediterranean. Good-looking day on Sunday across Sicily and Sardinia. Some sunshine for the Balearics, but more rain heading into southern Spain and Portugal. Plenty of sunshine in the Canaries this weekend, and things are warming up into the mid-20s on Monday in Tenerife.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And then fashionistas are keen to see which new trends are set to hit the catwalk.
Well, our next guest is very well placed to share her predictions with us after being a contestant on hit ITV series Dress the Nation, as well as being an upcycling and sewing consultant.
Wow. Joining us now is Tendai Murewe. I want to go back to you appearing on the ITV Dress the Nation.
Right.
Tell us about that experience. What was that like?
Oh, that was one of my highlights as a upcycling consultant. I learned to sew in my kitchen 5 years ago. And then, during COVID, just making masks. Then the next thing I was on a Dress the Nation, making dresses in front of TV. Yeah, it was just incredible. I think we all had all these clothes that we have, but we don't know what to do with them. So mainly I started with men's jackets, taking off the sleeves and putting it like a print on.
I've tried this. I've tried taking off my sleeves before. I now have about 3 jackets with no sleeves. I never managed to put them back on.
You need to come to a workshop. You need to come to a workshop.
I need an upcycling consultant. 2025. What can we expect, fashion-wise?
I think bold prints are back. People are loving. I think you walk on the streets in frollers and oversized men's jackets.
So the exact opposite. We have drastically underperformed this morning. You're just saying not like us.
We just woke up this morning and thought it's winter, it's cold, it's grey.
Grey, miserable.
Is that not the way to go?
No, it is. I think because fashion is expressive. It's whatever you want to express yourself.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. All right, my friends, it's time for Triggered Tantrums. Kai, have you got one for us? It's coming, my friends, I promise. This week's best in huffing, puffing and blowing absolutely nothing down. If you thought toddlers were dramatic, my friends, just wait till you see this lot. Right, Will, what have you got for us?
Yeah, this is a new segment for us, and I think we could probably fill it entirely every week with segments from The View. With Kai and with segments from The View, much of a muchness. This was their response to Trump's decision to end DI that we discussed earlier.
But he also revoked an order, the Equal Opportunity order signed by Lyndon Johnson in 1965. So not only are we now going back 4 years...
He can sue Lyndon Johnson, maybe.
Well, we're not only... You know, he's not taking us back 4 years. Yeah. He's taking us back to 1965 before... Yes. Before...
Well, I think you'll find that they took us back to an age of not knowing what a man and a woman was.
I'm not sure if we heard the very end there, but it was before interracial marriage. So they're suggesting Trump's going to ban interracial marriage now. What is it with these journalists who just go that step too far with Trump? They cannot help themselves.
Well, it's the same with the Labour Party. You know, they've won this massive majority and they can't help but make a total mess of it.
Because they can't believe that people feel like Trump.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. That's it. They still think that they're above him and they're above all of the deplorables.
All right, Renee, what have you got?
So I'm going to the States as well, actually, because there were so many marches around the inauguration this week that I literally could have done the entire 3-hour show showing you clips from those marches where you just let your chin hit the floor. And I particularly liked one where they spoke to an angel on the street.
I'm personally here because I had a mental breakdown after Donald Trump won.
It's devastation. It's absolute, complete devastation to people's mental, emotional, physical, and psychological health. People are dying as a result of Trump being elected. There are people dying by suicide because they don't want to live in a country where their rights are not respected and them as people are not seen as...
She's literally standing there dressed as an angel in the street worrying about other people's physical and mental health. I just rest my case.
You couldn't make it up. You really couldn't. You people. Right, OK, now this woman wants to show the difference between lies and truth. But guess what she can't define? Have a listen.
What is your biggest fear in 2025?
People not understanding the difference between lies and truth.
What is a woman?
Does it really matter?
So could I be a woman if I wanted to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Silly man. That's a lie, isn't it? That's a lie. You don't know what you know what a woman is. I'm sure that when she looks in the mirror in the morning, she's aware of what a woman is.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Takes me back to Michelle Dewberry's masterclass earlier in the week, dismantling the Letty on her show.
Oh, she was great, actually. Put that commie in his place. Alex, what have you got?
Well, you know, the tantrums don't stop, do they? And particularly for some groups, but this is a piece of art I'm sure you can all enjoy.
It's a lie, though, burying disciples. One page of the Bible isn't worth a line. The saints in the
You think it's a still image, and then you see the eyes close and the tears running down.
Don't do this.
No,
just argue their case.
But this is the hysterical thing. Yeah. It's hysterical, isn't it? Because she thought, I'm going to set a camera up, I'm going to pretend to cry, close my eyes at this dramatic moment. Oh, for goodness sake, get a life.
Yeah. All right.
You know what? I don't disagree about the left, and let's just cue up this video so we can get on. We have another...
Really broke down in tears, and several of my friends cried as well. It's scary. I mean, a lot of my friends are nurses, and we are scared for our future. I think that the people that are in support of it are probably in support of it for the wrong reason. They want cheaper eggs and gas and milk.
Oh, dearie me.
So she's dressed as someone from The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes, right, yes.
And she's making out, oh, whoa, this is all terrible, everyone's going to die. I mean, you people are deranged.
They're not well.
The problem, and actually, you know, this segment has been really illustrating because I think the problem with the left... The problem with the left...
You're the left?
Yes,
Oh, so you're the problem. OK, end the show. End the show.
The problem with the left is that lots of these people who you see in these clips haven't knocked on doors, haven't been doing the activism that they need to be.
All right, thank you very much. Right, we're going to get ready back in a moment. I'm off for a drink. We're off for a drink.
Oh, we're going for a drink.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's going to stay quite changeable over the next couple of days with some outbreaks of heavy rain and some showers and some strong winds too, although there will perhaps be some glimmers of sunshine in the middle. We have this weather front situated out to the west of the UK at the moment. That pushes its way eastwards through the rest of this evening, bringing some quite heavy downpours, particularly to parts of northern England and Scotland, and this perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground. Some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Wales and England, but this generally a little lighter and more scattered than further north. Some clear skies developing behind, and that will likely turn those temperatures quite chilly overnight, dropping below zero across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. So there may be some ice around to start on Sunday. It will be a bit of a cloudier start, though, across parts of Wales and southern England through Sunday morning. We've got this area of heavy rain arriving across the very far southwest, so a damp start to the day for Devon and Cornwall. For parts of Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland, a dry and bright start to the morning with some sunshine around. But further north, there will still be some showers, and again, these likely falling as sleet and snow, mainly over the high ground, but perhaps to lower levels for a time. As we then go through the rest of Sunday morning, that area of rain pushes its way northwards, spreading across much of the UK by the time we get to the afternoon. Some quite heavy downpours likely, and some blustery showers following in behind on that brisk southwesterly wind. That southwesterly wind does draw in some slightly milder air, so temperatures in the far southwest turning a little milder, 9 to 11 degrees, but elsewhere around about average, so 6 to 8 degrees quite widely. To start on Monday then, we have got low pressure across the UK, so heavy blustery showers still feeding in from the southwest. These likely to merge to longer spells of rain across northern parts, and plenty of showers as well across the far north of Scotland. So an unsettled start to the new working week, and that theme continues through much of next week. However, there are some hints that we'll see high pressure building and turning a little bit chillier by next weekend.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Saturday night, my friends, and this is the Saturday 5. Welcome to the bar. Joining us for a drink tonight is Alex Armstrong, Renee, Kai Wilshaw and Will Kingston. We've got plenty more coming up tonight. We're joined by a congressman from the United States of America, of course fresh after Donald J. Trump's inauguration. And what a wild week it's been. We're going to take your questions in the bar and we'll show you Keir Starmer's bizarre ode to the Scottish people. Honestly, this man. It's 8 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Yes, this is Saturday 5 Extra, where anything goes, my friends. That's why I'm drinking this. Now, if you at home are concerned that Darren Grimes is drinking water, fret not. This is gin. Now, just gin.
Gin and a light tonic, I might add. Yeah, that was a very important request from Darren.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to not be a fat pig. Now, Tim has messaged in, and Tim's quite angry. He says, nice to see the chaps let Renee go first for her drink. Equality of the sexes we believe in here.
100%. 100%.
Yes.
It should be that way all the time.
All right, we've got lots more coming up. Of course, we're going to talk about sex-starved rats in New York.
Yeah.
But enough about Kai. It's Saturday Night News with Aaron Armstrong.
Oh, my God.
Hello there, very good evening to you. Our headlines. 4 female Israeli soldiers taken hostage on the 7th of October have been reunited with their families. This is the moment Nama Levy, Karina Aviev, Daniela Gilboa and Liri Albag saw their loved ones again after being held in Gaza for 477 days, all 4 clearly overcome with emotions. Earlier, they were seen surrounded by armed Hamas fighters on a podium in Gaza City before being taken to the border by the Red Cross and handed to the IDF. Now, this is the second release of hostages to take place since the ceasefire deal was agreed last Sunday, although around 90 are still being held in Gaza. In return, Israel has released around 200 Palestinian prisoners from jail, prompting scenes of jubilation in the city of Ramallah in the West Bank. However, serious offenders, those convicted of the gravest crimes, were not there. Around 70 of those are being deported. It's understood this bus is on its way to Cairo in Egypt, where Palestinians on board will then travel to neighbouring countries, including Qatar and Turkey. A 14-year-old has been charged with the murder of Birmingham schoolboy Leo Ross, who was stabbed in a country park on Tuesday. The youth, who can't be named because of his age, was arrested around 4 hours after the 12-year-old Leo suffered fatal injuries in the Hall Green area. His family have released a statement describing Leo as an amazing, kind boy who is loved so much by everyone. 3 teenagers have died and a 4th man has suffered life-threatening injuries after a car hit a tree near Wakefield in West Yorkshire. They were travelling near the village of West Breton when it left the road and crashed on Friday night. The 18-year-old driver and 2 19-year-old passengers died. 2 other men were taken to hospital. 1 is said to be in a critical condition. Farmers from across the UK have been staging a National Day of Unity in a bid to protect the sector. It comes as pressure mounts on the government to halt the controversial inheritance tax laws that could see some forced to sell their farms. And the National Union has warned many farmers at breaking point and can't afford the bills.
Farmers are on their knees. They can't pass their farms to their children. They're already struggling to make ends meet. We have more suicides for farmers and for individual workers than pretty much any profession. They struggle with poverty. They struggle with years of all of the impact of the climate change sort of measures that have been put in place. They are just struggling to make ends meet. And now this new Labour government has come in to destroy their way of life, to destroy the British countryside. Who is going to protect our beautiful countryside and our way of life without the farmer?
And 2 new weather warnings for snow and ice have come into effect for Northern Ireland and large parts of Scotland as the clear-up after Storm Éowyn continues. Extra engineers have been drafted in to help restore electricity across Ireland, with hundreds of thousands of people on both sides of the border still without power earlier this evening. Meanwhile, travel services remain severely disrupted in Scotland, with trains and ferries suspended and plenty of roads closed. And more than 40,000 customers are still without electricity there, as some will have to wait several days to be reconnected. ScotRail has advised a disruption on the railways will continue into Sunday. And those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me around 9 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, thank you very much to Aaron there. Now, my friends, Grumpy Grandad has messaged in, a good friend of the show, and he says, have a drink for me. Grumpy Grandad, you know you don't have to ask me twice.
Is he better? He was in hospital.
I don't know if he's out of hospital. He'll let us know. I hope you are, though.
Well, let's raise a cheers.
Yes,
to Grumpy Grandad.
Grumpy Grandad.
It's a good friend.
Cheers.
Good friend. Now, my friends, of course, you're with the Saturday 5. Thank you very much for your company. I'm Darren Grimes, and I can promise that you're in for a very fun final hour where anything can happen. I'm a bit nervous, to be perfectly honest. We're going to get to some of your questions. Our first question comes from Julie Ford about the Renters' Rights Bill.
Hi panel, Julie Ford here. So my question is on the Renters' Rights Bill, particularly the fact that the new amendment means tenants will not have to pay rent before they sign a tenancy agreement. But the landlord will be obliged to have to let the tenant move in, even if they do not pay rent. Do you think this will increase or decrease homelessness for the future? Thanks very much.
Oh, I think this is going to massively increase homelessness. Julie, the marginal landlord who isn't making a lot of money is just going to leave the market
I'm
altogether.
One of them. And I'm currently selling the little flat that I had that used to be my son's. And that the Renters' Rights Bill is going to destroy the rental market and push up rents because there'll be fewer properties and homelessness, as Julie says. She's absolutely right.
So it prices people out of the market.
Absolutely.
Well, what's interesting in Argentina is before President Milei just took over, they had price rent caps, they had regulation on rents up through the roof, and it just pushed the prices to all-time highs. This is what Sadiq Khan is calling for, by the way. And since he's cut it all, prices and rents have dropped dramatically because the free market sorts it out. Stop. Why do they just keep on interfering with things that have nothing to do with them?
Well, why do we always forget these stories? Why, you know, as Julie says there, and I think Julie probably agrees with us, but do you think actually that we need reminded of economic lessons?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think, number one, we are run by historical illiterates who many times, you know, don't know the historical basis of free speech or the historical basis of free market economics, and I think that is really depressing. The other thing I would say is if you regulate as a politician, it looks like you're doing something. It looks like you're active. It looks like you're busy. It looks like you're achieving something. It is actually harder to take a step back and do less than it is to say, oh, I'm going to take control of this situation.
Well, you know what we could do? We could start actually repealing some laws. Like, that is doing something. And we just keep on building and building and building on top of these, like, ancient laws. And rather than look at them going, is that fit for purpose today?
There's a great old Australian business tycoon called Kerry Packer, and in front of a Senate inquiry, he said, I've got an idea for you people. Every time you introduce a new law, you need to get rid of an old one.
Good idea.
Kai, you're a rent... I nearly said you're a rent boy there.
I thought that might...
You are someone that rents. Now, are you worried about what the repercussions of this assault on the rental market market will mean.
Well, it can't be any worse than what we've seen in the last few years, right? Because if you look at if you look at since Boris Johnson took office, rental prices, especially in London and particularly in London, have skyrocketed, and there's no idea. Nobody has a way out. Nobody understands the light at the end of the tunnel. I want to see some actual, real, clear policies that address
Do you know how you do that?
No, look, I don't know. I'm not over the details of Renters' Rights Bill. Are we all? But I think something needs to be done, because clearly this is a sector...
Build.
This is a sector that's in dire need of reform.
I'm going to say this on air. It has just taken me, via the court process, 20 months to evict a tenant who didn't pay his rent and smashed up my flat.
And that's nuts.
20 months.
Yeah,
They're
I agree with
going
you.
to make it harder.
But Labour have done that. All right, my friends.
20 months? Mm-hmm. So you're saying that Labour's at fault for something that started 20 months ago? That's crazy.
Harder.
Yes, no, in fact, you won't be able to get him out full stop. Right, OK, our second question is from Lee in Bedford. Good evening, Lee. And it's about President Donald J. Trump.
Hello, Lee here from Bedford. With everybody saying that we need our own Donald Trump, who does the panel think would make a good Donald Trump?
I think that's a fantastic question, Lee. I don't know if I can take this one.
Alex's impression is genuinely
very good.
It's been a work.
Kai, we'll start with you this time.
You know what? I think one of the great things about Donald Trump, and one of the reasons he was underestimated, is he was a celebrity who came to power and then was, as he was then, as he is in power. So I think somebody like a Jeremy Clarkson, somebody with populist appeal and popular appeal, who actually has some common sense solutions to real world problems.
That is a good call.
I think our answer is Nigel Farage, obviously, isn't it? You know, he's the man against the grain. He's saying things that are deeply upsetting the Uni Party, and he's the man that's going to lead us into the next general election, hopefully to victory.
And the problem is, and I do believe that reform should be reckoned with. But the problem with Farage and reform at the minute is, yes, they have enthusiasm in their voter base, but the rest of the country have an unfavourable view of them.
That's changing. It's changing, though, isn't it? That was the same for Donald Trump in America. Let's bear that in mind. Donald Trump was predicted 1%. It was 1% when he first became a candidate.
That was the Republican Party.
And in the country, they put him at 5% chance of winning this. And what did he have? A landslide victory.
You don't need a majority of the country to get into government.
Exactly. Labour's a prime example.
Look, Farage is the obvious one, but I think the real rising star in British politics is Rupert Lowe. If they get into government, Farage will be the Prime Minister initially, but don't rule out Rupert Lowe being the real star in the next decade.
Rupert Lowe's fantastic.
It's really interesting you say that, because I asked this week on social media, is Rupert Lowe typifying how we want our politicians to be? And it was just an unmitigated yes.
He's brilliant.
But don't underestimate the power. You know, I was sat in a living room not too long ago that I thought was completely apolitical. And they all told me that they're voting reform because they want to vote for Nigel Farage. You can't underestimate celebrity power.
He is the answer.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
But Lowe hasn't got that.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't have the years of success, the Brexit campaign, the international campaign, the international knowledge.
He was chairman of a football club.
Well, no, but Nigel. What I'm saying is Nigel Farage has got all of those things. He knows the Americans. That's obviously he's going over there as a celebrity now, rather than some unknown politician, which he was in 2016. The change in Nigel Farage from becoming an outsider to potential Prime Minister is dramatic, and we can't underestimate that. People are looking over it, but it's the same that happened to Trump.
All right, our third question then is from Jonathan in Cornwall. I hope it's not Jonathan Liss. It's about British business.
Hello from Cornwall. My question is, should we be optimistic that British business can actually succeed and export itself with the weak pound to overcome the blunders of British government in recent years? Should we be optimistic about British business?
Extra marks for the scenic background from Jonathan. That was lovely.
Beautiful. Yeah,
I think the only exporting that our businesses are going to do under this government is themselves out of our country.
Yeah. We just saw Mark Andreessen, one of the world's largest investors. He has packed up London and said it's too regulated under this Labour government. He's moving it all back to America because that's where the money's going. As I said before, mass liquidations of businesses, millionaires leaving. Even Rachel Reeves looks like she's going to do a U-turn. I mean, the next 4 years are going to be a disaster.
You got my hopes up then, because I thought you were going to say even Rachel Reeves looks like she's leaving.
Well, that would be welcome news.
I don't think you can labour this point enough, no pun intended, and that is that net zero prohibits us being that kind of export superpower. The kind of industries that we used to have where men were proud of their work, making things with their hands, they're being denied from a generation of people because energy-intensive industry simply can't afford to run.
You talked about historical illiteracy earlier, and it is undeniable that every great growth surge over the last 200 years has been driven by cheap energy, and it is something which this government obviously doesn't get. You cannot be pro-growth and pro-net zero. It is a contradiction in terms.
And then, you know, Kai goes on about foreign aid earlier. Well, guess what? The best way of actually boosting them out of poverty would be that rich supply of energy. And you want them to, I don't know, sit there in Africa.
We're being forced, but we're going to be forced to buy their energy, make them rich and make us poor. That's the reality. That's what's happening in India. We'll be moving our steel factories there.
Which is dirty coal-powered energy in China compared to hydrocarbon energy in the UK.
Then shipped on a dirty boat.
But it is self-flagellation of colonialism, isn't it? That we'll make ourselves feel better by making India rich.
No. The opportunities for areas in this country that have been let down by deindustrialisation to reindustrialise in green energy, in AI, in nuclear energy and others, you can't miss that opportunity.
How many of them have you had?
This is my only one,
It's just the same
unfortunately.
type of kind of hot air jargon that Rachel Reeves does. What we don't hear is the how. It's all very well and good to talk about growth, to talk about AI, to talk about industrialisation again, but you can't answer, and in fairness, Rachel Reeves can't say, how are we going to do it? They just don't know.
True.
All right, well, whilst Rachel Reeves puts on that Lego bob that she's got. Coming up next, Donald Trump has been back in office less than a week and has already changed the face of the United States of America, possibly forever. And, of course, the Western world. We'll be joined by a sitting Republican member of Congress to tell us what's been going on. You're with the Saturday 5, only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Underestimate what you did, because to do it in their backyard as well, I bet they weren't happy about it, were they, Brad?
No, definitely not. Well, it makes it all the more sweeter. So they're usually pretty dominant in a two-man event, but four-man's usually where we can challenge them. And, yeah, we managed to do it yesterday and put down 2 solid runs and, yeah.
So, yeah, funding was a big issue for us in the last quad, but because of our results recently, we've picked up a lot more funding from UK Sport. So we're well funded now, and but yeah, the bob is in the back of the van behind us, so we're driving it down to St Moritz as we speak. So yeah, that's how it all works in the background in bobsleigh.
Brad, you're the pilot, correct? So you're up front.
Yeah.
Now, what happens? I always wonder, because I remember seeing John Noakes on. Do you remember John Noakes on Blue Peter when he fell out of the bob and he ended up showing the back of his backside on TV because he had a big scar on there? So you've got the brake man. You're at the front. So where are you then, Aaron? Are you what number are you?
So I'm number 3. Yeah.
Right. So what do you do there? Is it just a matter of it's the running power is what it's all about to get off to a good start, and then you can sit and enjoy the ride?
Yeah, that's it. So for number 2 and myself, number 3, it's all about getting that bob off the line and then just zipping it up to as high a speed as we can, basically. Getting in, staying low, having good aerodynamics and staying still and let Brad do the work.
Yeah, it's definitely not a comfortable position for them because we're bending them and twisting them into quite an uncomfortable position to get as aerodynamic as possible. And when you've got 6 times G's pushing you through that is not... Yeah, not
definitely
fun.
stiff back this morning, that's for sure.
Because I'm just thinking where me and Eamon would sit. Is it 2 and 3, or would he go at number 4? What do you fancy?
I would be too frightened to do that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5 Extra. Now, President Donald Trump, he's had a very busy week. He's had more than his fair share of extra. Starting off his second term in office with a bang. He signed over 20 executive orders on day one, rubbishing President Biden's legacy. He declared a national emergency on the Mexico border and began deploying military aircraft to deport illegal migrants. Many of you getting in touch with me today saying, more baby more, here baby here. And yesterday he suggested he may get rid of the FEMA Emergency Response Agency as he visited the disaster-ravaged states of California and North Carolina. In California, he really made a show of the mayor in California. Now, what a wild week. What does it all mean, my friends? Well, we're joined by the Republican congressman from Virginia, the great state of Virginia, Representative Morgan Griffith. Morgan, thank you very much for your company. What have you made of it so far? Have you had a chance to take it all in yet? What a whirlwind.
Well, it is a whirlwind, and I don't know that you can absorb it all in a small amount of time, but the president's doing great things. He's trying to secure our border. He's already moving on that. He's moving on energy front. I heard you all talking about energy earlier. You're absolutely right. Affordable energy creates more jobs and makes life better for everybody. The president's working in that direction. It's just been a fabulous week. And of course, he didn't even start until 12 noon on Monday. So he's had a great week, a lot of reforms across the board, but border and energy are the ones I think will have the longest impact, although getting rid of the DEI offices is important, and making sure that federal workers actually come to work as opposed to staying at home. I think all of these are significant steps in the right direction.
Yes. Morgan, before I pass you on to a very eager Will, I want to ask you, what do you think the difference is between the 2016 incoming president-elect and what was the 2025 incoming president-elect?
When he came in 2016 or 2017, he was new to Washington. He didn't fully understand the depth of the so-called deep state. He thought he might be able to work some things out with some folks. Now he's had that original 4 years. He understands what's going on just a little bit better, and he is ready and poised to make changes. And look, the status quo has not worked for us. We have to do a better job. And we're going to go in here, we're going to try to change a lot of things. Some of it we won't get right. And I hope people understand that we've got to change the status quo. That means that we're going to get most of it right, but we're not going to get all of it right. And we have to recognize that if we get something wrong, we got to change it quickly, move directions, be ready to go. But the American people want us to reform government, want us to reform things like FEMA, if not get rid of it. And I'm not sure we should get rid of it, but it certainly needs to be a little bit more user-friendly. And we need to go in those directions, and he's going to need Congress to go along with him on that. We're ready to help change as much as we can because we've got 4 years to do it in. And in reality, we may only have 2 years because the next election's coming up, may change the balance just a little bit. I hope they don't.
Well, time goes very fast indeed, and tell you what, we in this country are counting down the days, not so you get rid of President Donald J. Trump, but so we get rid of Prime Minister Starmer. Will?
Yeah, Morgan, the Republican Party is now obviously Donald Trump's party, but at the same time, there are still a smattering of neocons around. There are still some of those old school country club Republicans that are lying around. How united is the Republican Party around the MAGA movement, or are there still some divisions there?
Well, there are always going to be some divisions. The one great thing about Republicans that I've always appreciated is that we're free thinkers. That means you're going to have some people on either side saying, wait a minute, maybe we should do that. But I think energy will be easy. I think the border will be easy because some of the Democrats who recognize the American people don't want their policies that they've had the last 4 years are going to move with us on both energy and the border. And then, you know, as you move forward, things get a little sticky here and there, but we're going to try to get as much done as we can.
Yeah. Renee?
So I was just actually, we were looking earlier, thank you for coming on, at the left in America just melting down last week over the inauguration. Just the most ridiculous scenes on the streets of women saying that people are going to die because of Trump. They're going to commit suicide. Is that continuing or is it easing off slightly? Or are they just going to carry on for 4 years?
I would say that a large part of the left, and particularly the far left, they have bought into their own falsehoods that, you know, the world is going to come to an end under Trump. And, you know, therefore you hear this type of rhetoric. And I don't think that's lessening up on that far left at all. I do think that we have a lot of, you know, things that we're going to show them. They're going to immediately react negatively. But then after a year or so, they're going to go, yeah, that really wasn't so bad. And that's what we hope for. And that's what we think will show the American people this is the right direction. And we'll win the midterm elections as well.
Oh, well, that's confidence. Alex?
Do you think with the emergence of popularity of Baron Trump that we're seeing a new political dynasty of the Trumps? Obviously, we've had the Clintons, an attempt potentially for maybe the Obamas with Michelle. But do you think Baron Trump is the next coming of Trump, as so many have said?
A lot of his children are very talented. So I do think that you may see any number of his children involved in political matters. It may be a dynasty. I will tell you that, you know, Americans have elected 2 President Bushes and 2 Adamses. We might elect 2 Trumps, but it's interesting. I don't think Americans will ever elect 3 of a single family. But, well, you know, senators, congressmen, yeah, I think you'll see a lot of people out of the Trump family moving in politics in the future.
Well, I hope to Almighty God that we don't end up with another Clinton because, you know, she won't have to go up against President Donald J. Trump anymore, so she may have another bite of the cherry. Now, I'm going to introduce you to a man, Morgan, who did indeed campaign for Hillary Rodham Clinton. Can you believe this? Kai, what have you got?
Look, all I want to know is whether the honeymoon period will really last that long. My question, I suppose, is, with Trump riding high right now, it looks like he's unassailable. But as you said, Representative, 2 years down the line, things might be very different. How confident really are you that these opinion polls and this popularity will translate into real-time results and votes in...
You mentioned DEI, and we've talked about DEI on the show tonight. My simple question would be, in 10 years' time, do you think an 18-year-old American kid leaving school will have heard of DEI? Do you think it'll be done?
I think those who study history may know about it. I think otherwise it's done. People always believe that, you know, deep in their souls, everybody knows you want people of merit. You want people who have the best chance of getting the job done. And I believe that there are talented people in all sexes, all races, all nationalities, all heritages, and just pick the best people to move forward on whatever the task is, and that will make our nation better and make the world better.
Yeah, all right, well,
brilliant.
Yeah, definitely, that optimism. We've needed that, actually, because right now we're drinking alcohol just to try and get through life in Britain today. But the Republican congressman from Virginia, Representative Morgan Griffith there, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Morgan.
Thank you.
Now, Ray has emailed in, and Ray says at last common sense prevails and Trump is leading the way. It does feel like that. It does feel that I've never felt like this before, that, you know, I'm banking on some foreign president to do well to help us out a bit.
Well, I heard a really interesting comment on a podcast the other day, and they said for the first time in our lifetime, so the first time in, say, 35 years, the right is actually winning the culture war. With the whole time, it's just been this constant attempt to try and push back against the leftist march through the institutions. This is the first time the right is cool. It's the first time the right is winning.
I agree, and I'm really emboldened by it, but we, of course, have to win the war, not just the battle. And Trump is one man, or maybe just a couple of others, like President Milei in Argentina, of many of the pro-DEI, pro-woke, pro-ideology.
Well, Alex, my question to you is, though, will the momentum that we're seeing in the US translate to the UK?
Well, that's a good question, because I think Donald Trump himself is obviously putting a lot of pressure on big tech companies, like Zuckerberg's changing his policies. You've got Google getting rid of their DEI, Microsoft, and those companies operate here in the UK. Yes. So if they become more profitable and they do well as a result of that, other companies will copy, and that's where the cultural war is won.
I'm hearing some breaking news. Kai Wilshaw has joined Reform UK.
Pretty unlikely.
Just got this in. How many beers has he had? He's drank that. Damn that.
It was only a small one.
It's a bar, but it's not a free bar.
I think that point, Alex, is really key, because I don't believe over the last 5 years that one of these companies in the UK has made any of their DEI policies because they believed it was the right thing to do. They did it because it was the prevailing narrative and they thought that was how they were going to make profit.
It was the agenda.
Now they think that they're going to make profit by going the other way. These people are mercenary. They want to make profit.
All right, now, coming up next, you've sent in your questions in Ask the Five. We'll be getting to those in just a moment. Plus, one Harry Potter fan catches the golden snitch from his own bin. You're with the Saturday Five live on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's going to stay quite changeable over the next couple of days, with some outbreaks of heavy rain and some showers and some strong winds too, although there will perhaps be some glimmers of sunshine in the middle. We have this weather front situated out to the west of the UK at the moment. That pushes its way eastwards through the rest of this evening, bringing some quite heavy downpours, particularly to parts of northern England and Scotland, and this perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground. Some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Wales and England, but this generally a little lighter and more scattered than further north. Some clear skies developing behind, and that will likely turn those temperatures quite chilly overnight, dropping below zero across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. So there may be some ice around to start on Sunday. It will be a bit of a cloudier start, though, across parts of Wales and southern England through Sunday morning. We've got this area of heavy rain arriving across the very far southwest, so a damp start to the day for Devon and Cornwall. For parts of Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland, a dry and bright start to the morning with some sunshine around. But further north, there will still be some showers, and again, these likely falling as sleet and snow, mainly over the high ground, but perhaps to lower levels for a time. As we then go through the rest of Sunday morning, that area of rain pushes its way northwards, spreading across much of the UK by the time we get to the afternoon. Some quite heavy downpours likely, and some blustery showers following in behind on that brisk southwesterly wind. That southwesterly wind does draw in some slightly milder air, so temperatures in the far southwest turning a little milder, 9 to 11 degrees, but elsewhere around about average, so 6 to 8 degrees quite widely. To start on Monday then, we have got low pressure across the UK, so heavy blustery showers still feeding in from the southwest. These likely to merge to longer spells of rain across northern parts, and plenty of showers as well across the far north of Scotland. So an unsettled start to the new working week, and that theme continues through much of next week. However, there are some hints that we'll see high pressure building and turning a little bit chillier by next weekend.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5 Extra. Now, speaking of extra, just before we get to your questions, a man that's on television more than the adverts. We've got Ben Leo coming up after us. Ben Leo, what have you... Oh, look, make yourself at home.
I hope those shoes are clean.
It's a bit tight on this sofa,
It also must be a bit awkward sitting near the guy who tried to take your job over the last 2 weeks.
And what a sterling job he did.
Yes,
well
we love
done.
to
Shake your hand for that. Thank you,
mate.
Did he poison you as well?
It smells like a boozer in here.
Well,
we need it after the first 2 hours.
Yeah, that's true.
Big show coming up 9 to 11 p.m. The soft launch of my new show.
Oh.
I'm not going to make a big song and dance about it, but new format. New panel, new segments, including I'm getting out and about once a week in the new town or city across the UK, getting a flavour of the community there, how are the government policies affecting the locals, and so on and so on. This week I went to a town, I won't say where just yet, but there was a migrant hotel there, so I had a little bit of fun down there. And I've got a rallying cry tonight, make Britain great again.
Yeah.
You know, use America, this golden age in America that Donald Trump is so buoyant about, use it as a blueprint for Britain.
Agreed.
And do you remember Sir Keir Starmer's speech, first ever speech in the Rose Garden of Downing Street?
No, I fell asleep.
Where he said, this is basically, not verbatim, he said, you know, we're down a dark path, everything's a mess, it's going to be a massive task to get back on our feet. Compare that to Donald Trump. He's just released a video tonight and in his inauguration speech as well, saying, this is going to be the best era of America ever, everybody's going to be happy, we're all going to be rich, you know, let's get some optimism. Just compare the two. And it made me laugh, Rachel Reeves today, saying, you know, maybe we need to copy the positivity of Donald Trump. Really?
This is what she normally does.
Whilst taxing and regulating everything out of existence.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the idea that they've got this Trumpist boosterism is just for the birds.
Socialism don't work.
Well, that's it. Do you know, for saying you're not going to toot it up too much, I'd say that you did a phenomenal toot.
Sounds great.
Well, also, just to add, sorry to steal your showtime, but the whole 10 o'clock hour on this show now is going to be focused on tomorrow's papers, because Sunday newspapers, of course, always full of massive exclusives, breaking stories, so we're going to really dedicate some time getting stuck into that. And there's a breaking story tonight in The Times about Southport, the monster, who I won't name anymore, prevents the counter-terrorist scheme. They shrugged off his interest in school massacres as just him having an interest in news and current affairs.
Crazy.
They wouldn't do that if he was a white supremacist.
No, they wouldn't.
No.
Yeah,
I tell you that.
absolutely right.
Right, OK, well, Ben, sounds all very good, but you haven't got alcohol.
Can I stay here?
You haven't got a pub. No, you can't. Get your own drink.
But Kai and Alex are so comfortable.
Right, we've got... what have we got coming up now? We've got, well, more of this.
Questions.
And our next question is from Fergus, who wants to ask about how to oust a government.
Given the current state of our government, notice me as an old person zipped up really warm, because otherwise I'll freeze to death. Given the things that they're doing wrong, should there be some sort of way of getting rid of a government even 6 months into their term? So the current government is there for 4 or 5 years, whatever they decide. So does the team think we should have some way of saying no, no, no to the government and getting rid of them quickly?
So this is the Tories' fault again, isn't it, for introducing fixed 5-year terms? Because prior to that, you could get rid of a government.
Well, that's gone now.
Well, you can still...
Parliament Act is gone. Yeah, 100%, because they had to get rid of... Boris repealed that and Dominic Cummings.
Oh, I stand corrected.
Yeah.
So we can get rid of
Yeah,
them?
we can. Well, we technically can, but they're not going to call it election.
It doesn't work in a parliamentary democracy. That's the problem. Our system is set up that MPs must trigger an election in a vote in Parliament. In order to do that, the Prime Minister would have to...
So inconvenient, isn't it, a parliamentary democracy, don't you think, Alex?
Well, a benevolent dictatorship.
Come on. We are, what, 7, 8 months in to a government that's been elected with a huge landslide.
No, it wasn't. It was a lucky numbers landslide.
Stop this ridiculous argument. It was a landslide.
Keir Starmer won less votes than Jeremy Corbyn.
Let them have their time.
And address Fergus himself, what he was saying, right? No, hang on. You said, what is it, 9 months into this government? And already someone like Fergus is feeling in the depths of despair, saying that he's deeply worried and concerned about what's happening to his country. You should be ashamed of yourself. You voted
That
for
is,
this.
that is so unfair. Now, I understand Fergus's concerns. Many of us felt that way after many elections where the Conservatives were returned to power. But look, we have a system of parliamentary democracy in this country. Only an election can overturn that. Now, in the meantime, I encourage people like Fergus and those watching to make their voices heard, to protest, to knock on doors, to get out there. But the fact is, an election is an election,
Well,
and that's that.
He says we've got parliamentary democracy. I seem to remember when we had a referendum about a really big constitutional affair. Parliamentary democracy tried to do all it could to overturn that vote.
Yeah, that was different democracy.
Different democracy. Look, sadly, though, there is no mechanism to be able to bring about an early election, but the problem is 5-year terms. It is too long. You need to have a 4-year term limit.
Can I say, we should have some sort of like buyer's remorse votes 3 months later, because what we found is that Labour have actually reneged on so many of their manifesto promises. And in my opinion, you should be legally obliged to be held to those manifesto promises.
I think manifestos should be legally binding.
And then they go to prison because they'd all be in jail right now because they've broken so many of their promises.
Manifesto anyway. They introduced loads of things that weren't. But I think you're right. Maybe after 3 months or even 6 months, you have a confirmatory vote. Did you do the right thing?
There you go.
Wow.
Or at least put people in prison who lie about their manifesto.
OK. Oh, I love this one. Question 5 is from the farmer, a good friend of the channel, Gareth Jones, and it's about this very important issue. Have a listen.
Good evening to you 5. A quick question on the day of unity for the farmers. What are your thoughts of now the supermarkets coming out and backing, you know, the family farm inheritance tax credits, and we've got a few banks as well. What's your thoughts? Mine are, we need this government to really rethink this ridiculous policy. But I'm very excited to hear what your thoughts of what's happening to the farming industry, and your thoughts on what government are doing for us. Well, one thing is they're not listening.
That's the heroic Welshman there, Gareth Jones, who is a super farmer, and he has a massive social media reach that speaks to people and actually highlights the plight of many of our family farms going through at the minute. Labour, I'm going to listen. You could have everyone and their mother come out and say it's
Sadly, I was thinking that today because I was looking at the protests that were going on today. There's protests every weekend now. People should really get behind their local one and back them. And I was actually thinking, surely soon the tipping point will come. The supermarkets are with them, as Gareth says, and banks. Protests every weekend. I do think, Gareth, that the farmers are going to have to get a little bit bolder in their actions. They are going to have to blockade some supermarkets so some shelves are empty.
More French.
You know what? I think the British public would go with it.
Do you know what I think? Renee, how do you distinguish between that and idiots from Just Stop Oil be acting up and just blocking roads?
Because Just Stop Oil are campaigning for something that not everybody needs every day or believes in. This is about our future food security.
Not everyone would agree with you. I certainly agree with you, but not everyone would agree with you. That is the problem when you get into that topic.
I think the more radical you get, the more likely an issue you're going to, you know, I don't want to say that word. Okay.
Make people
You're going to upset the public, and I think that's exactly what Just Stop Oil have done. I agree with Will. So I think you've got there's a delicate balance. I totally agree, and I actually don't think Labour are going to listen. I think it's a dead course. Or what I would do if I were the farmers is really focus on the next incoming parties, the Reform Party and the Tories, to reverse this decision in 4 years' time. Hopefully, by that point, not many of the farmers would have been affected by that decision, and you can retroactively, hopefully, fix it. I'm sure, but listen, I'm just being realistic. I don't think Keir Starmer is a mover. I think he's a robot. He's inhuman, and I just don't think he's going to change his policy.
The fundamental problem is he doesn't listen because he's not a leader. He's a lawyer.
I don't think that's right. I think this government needs to understand that it's OK to change its mind or to change policies. And look, we've had issues, one of which being the inheritance tax fumble. Now, the obvious thing to do would be to look back at the changes, to find a common-sense solution through, because, frankly, this debate has been hijacked by non-farmers, but it is an issue for real farmers. And we need to listen to them, figure out a sensible solution, find a policy that we can all agree on that raises tax revenues and move on.
Right,
and
so
the
firstly,
problem
it's barely going to raise
is that we've
any money.
left it go on
It's
for so
very
long.
easy, Kai. They just say if you have a working farm, doesn't qualify. If you're a speculator who's bought land, you pay inheritance tax.
And the agriculture stuff, that agricultural land that we spoke about earlier.
Yeah.
Solar panels, it's all, I tell you, I think that's what this is all about. Right, coming up in a moment, we're bringing you our weird and wonderful favourite moments of the past week, including a mass rescue of miners and Keir Starmer's bizarre ode to Scotland, in which Will is going to recite the entire poem, I think. Aye.
I'm not going to let him.
No, look forward to that with the Saturday 5, only on GB News.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
More showers to come across Cyprus this weekend, although it does look drier by Monday. There's more wet weather to come across parts of Spain and Portugal too. There are those showers clearing by Monday. Plenty of fine and sunny weather over the central Mediterranean. Good-looking day on Sunday across Sicily and Sardinia. Some sunshine for the Balearics, but more rain heading into southern Spain and Portugal. Plenty of sunshine in the Canaries this weekend, and things are warming up into the mid-20s on Monday in Tenerife.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Jonathan, in London, we're hearing that there could be more posties from an Amazon point of view in order to limit or cut carbon emissions, but that they could put more people on foot delivering their parcels.
This is really interesting because more and more people now obviously are using Amazon and buying their shopping online or buying gifts online. And it's interesting that in London they're talking about putting their Amazon workers on foot. There are now parts of the country, I think Milton Keynes is one part of the country, where there's robots delivering parcels. Or
Really?
You'll see these, well, they call them robots. You'll see these little things sort of bundling down the street.
Yes.
Sort of,
robots.
Yeah, I mean, technically they are a robot, but when I think of a robot, I think of a sort of...
A humanoid robot.
Yeah, sort of humanoid thing, sort of, Lost in Space style robot. But actually, they're sort of... little sort of carriages, little
droids,
boxes.
like Star Wars droid type.
Well, they're not
thing.
even that. They're like a little sort of, like a box on wheels, delivering parcels in places like Milton Keynes and other bits of the country. So I think this is just another example of how the world is changing. Online shopping is completely changing the way in which we all live our lives, the way things.
But I think Milton Keynes lends itself to something like that. This is a newly designed town.
Yeah.
In the
Exactly, that's why they're in
years.
Milton Keynes.
And I really do think that a town like that really does lend itself towards a piece of tech like that. When I think back, our postie in Gloucestershire is a guy called Dave. He's fantastic. Everyone knows who he is. But I'm not sure that he could be replaced by one of these little droid things.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5 Extra. Well, it's all kicking off in here. Will's had some shots. It's now time for High Five, where we discuss our favourite moments from the past week. A note of optimism Because as I said earlier, in that conversation about Donald J. Trump, we could do with some optimism, right? Who's going to kick us off?
I'll go first. I think in a nice...
I was hoping you might say that.
Yeah, as we planned in the ad break, just to break...
This show is spontaneous.
You're ruining the illusion.
How dare you?
We just want to wish everyone a happy Burns night from the team at GB News. It's a wonderful time of the year for Scottish people. I had a ultimately turbulent and ill-fated relationship with a Scottish girl, but I was introduced to the concept of Burns night during that turbulent 6 months, and it's wonderful. There are some good ways and some really appropriate ways to celebrate Burns night. The King, I noted, if we've got an image of the King, he's got a lovely new kilt for the occasion. Which we may or may not see. Who knows?
That beautiful tartan kilt.
It's a ripper, isn't it? It's a cracker. And there are some other ways that some of our esteemed leaders have been celebrating Burns night. Let's go to Keir Starmer and see what he's doing to celebrate this Scottish tradition. Keir, yeah.
Oh.
That was the first photo that he put up to celebrate and honour the Scottish tradition of Burns night.
Are you serious?
Wow.
So for our radio listeners, what's going on here?
How do I do this in a way that doesn't get me cancelled?
Keir Starmer is talking to a drag queen that's about 2 feet taller than him.
Well, I assume because of a very high heel. In tartan, right?
Rather large.
I mean, that's what they're all after on Burns night. Do you like haggis?
I really like haggis.
I love haggis. Do you like haggis?
No.
Oh, I love it.
I didn't like haggis.
Haggis with tatties. Oh!
Yeah, I'm with you.
Love it, love it, love it. Right, why is your poem? Come on.
Yeah, so
you cheated. He's got a piece of paper in his hand.
I'm not a native Scot, but I very much appreciate the culture. So as everyone is sitting down for their Burns night dinner, I thought we'd talk about the Selkirk Geese.
What the hell was that?
Was
it Russian?
No,
Putin's in the room.
No, we've left Scotland and gone to India. What is going on here?
Some have meat that cannot eat, and some would eat that want it. But we have meat and we can eat, and say the Lord be thanked it.
So, thank you very much.
Don't ever go across the border.
Can we go?
Can we apologise?
I would just like to apologise.
Can we go to a break?
The people of Scotland. This appalling abuse of your accent. Right, Renee, what have you got? Please move on.
Right,
Please
so
move
very
on.
quickly, there was a mine in South Africa. There are lots of illegal mines in South Africa that are closed, but people are so poor that they still work down them. The police decided to actually just block them into the mine and smoke them out if they could. 5 months, these men, over 300, were trapped there, which is horrific. The police wouldn't go there, nor the rescue services, because it was too dangerous. So 2 local lads from the local town decided they would rescue them. And using an old shaft, nothing but a hard hat, they managed to rescue 276 people that were alive. I'm going to kill these boys. And 78 people sadly died. I thought that was a very uplifting story. Obviously, my panel are thinking other things.
Kai, do you like an old shaft?
No,
Have you ever tried one?
But I'm sure that Melania Trump does.
I'm not sure she does, actually.
My word.
Well, goodness gracious me. Anyway, Renee, that was a beautiful story.
It was fantastic.
A minor miracle, you might say.
Yes.
Now, I've stolen that from our producer. It's on the strap there. Now, right, teenagers, my friends. Those pesky little beggars.
Is that it?
No. Those in their, teenagers from, I think, the teenage years, so what, 13 until your early 20s. Well, some good news, in my opinion. It won't be to him. He thinks I believe in a magical pixie in the sky. But they're half as likely to identify as atheists than their parents.
Wow.
This is from a new poll. Now, I would argue that actually this is down to people being totally obsessed with the digital era, that they're looking for that longing. They're looking for something that's bigger than themselves. And I find it really interesting and quite therapeutic, actually, that so many people are exploring faith.
No, I agree with you. I would call myself a cultural Christian, and it's no doubt that there is a crisis of purpose amongst young men particularly, and if they are looking to religion and finding a purpose through that, through Judeo-Christian values, I think that's a wonderful thing.
Me too.
All right, Alex, what have you got?
Well, I've got a lovely little story here for anyone who collects books or rare items, or maybe one of your family members does. A young man found a first edition Harry Potter, I think it's the Philosopher's Stone book, in a rubbish pile, unfortunately, of a deceased man. It would have gone into the bin and been lost forever. And guess how much they're worth? Anyone want a gander? Eh? All right, well, okay. Really chassis panel tonight, eh? Chassis panel tonight. £40,000.
Well,
What a
answer.
fine.
I've got the auto cue.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, yeah. I'm not reading an auto cue. I can
Just
do
for our viewers.
I can do
we've
it
got
without
on the
an auto
screen.
cue. I can do it without an auto cue. Okay.
All right, Kai, unfortunately, what horrors can you be happy about?
You'll be glad to hear about some good news from New York City. A city rat expert in New York City has revealed that in the cold weather, rats' libido has actually decreased, meaning they're not bonking, they're burrowing away, meaning fewer rats for all New Yorkers. Now, I can only hope that this means it'll translate to fewer rats.
A sure sign, if ever, that the Democrats
have finished.
Are rats. No, thank you to our guests and to you, our lovely audience. Next up, it's Ben Lee News Show. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's going to stay quite changeable over the next couple of days with some outbreaks of heavy rain and some showers and some strong winds too, although there will perhaps be some glimmers of sunshine in the middle. We have this weather front situated out to the west of the UK at the moment. That pushes its way eastwards through the rest of this evening, bringing some quite heavy downpours, particularly to parts of northern England and Scotland, and this perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground. Some outbreaks of showery rain across parts of Wales and England, but this generally a little lighter and more scattered than further north. Some clear skies developing behind, and that will likely turn those temperatures quite chilly overnight, dropping below zero across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. So there may be some ice around to start on Sunday. It will be a bit of a cloudier start, though, across parts of Wales and southern England through Sunday morning. We've got this area of heavy rain arriving across the very far southwest, so a damp start to the day for Devon and Cornwall. For parts of Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland, a dry and bright start to the morning with some sunshine around. But further north, there will still be some showers, and again, these likely falling as sleet and snow, mainly over the high ground, but perhaps to lower levels for a time. As we then go through the rest of Sunday morning, that area of rain pushes its way northwards, spreading across much of the UK by the time